Let's drop the green flag on this episode of the Talent Tank Podcast with your host, Wyatt Pemberton, bringing you the best, fastest, most knowledgeable personalities in Ultra-4 and off-road racing.
This episode of the Talent Tank brought to you by three amazing partners: Custom Splice Off-Road Recovery Equipment, Brannick Motorsports Custom Machine, and Magnitude Performance, a massed motorsports company. Enjoy. All right. Here we go. The Talent Tank back in session right here. This episode, we've got two more left this before we hit summer. I know that seems like the spring is just blown right by, but it hasn't. We've been stuck in our houses, most of us, some of us, none of us. Some of us have been working on the phone, on the Skype. The reason why you guys dialed in today, we've got none other than the number 2 top epic moments in Ultra-4 history, a guy by the name of Rob Usnick, guy I call my friend. Rob, how are you?
Wyatt, good. Thank you so much for having me on the show, man. And I'm excited. I'm a huge fan of the show. I'm a huge fan of you. And like you said, I think we've been doing a group text between me, you, and the Kansas boys since what? I don't know, 8 or 9 years now. It's been a long time.
It's been a very long time. And I'm gonna have to let you down on this. You're in the U.S. Virgin Islands right now, right? You're in St. Thomas?
Yep, St. Thomas and the Virgin Islands.
You do not hold the record for the longest interview distance from Houston, Texas. That's Chris Bowler still has that, but he was in Poland when we did his interview.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he's wearing a jacket too, and we don't wear jackets down here unless they're rain jackets.
And you also don't wear full hats. You only have a half a hat.
Yeah, half a hat and half a shoes because all he wears is flip-flops.
Oh, yeah, man. How long have we known each other? 08, 07, 09? No?
Yeah, back to the early days. And, with Kelly and Matt was, I think Kelly might have been first because he came out to Fayetteville. We're all part of that early day Pirate 4x4 crew. And Kelly was buying some, I don't know, like a big tug or something from Fayetteville.
He bought an airport tug or an Air Force tug. And we're talking about Kelly Kaiser. And, he's a Paola, Kansas guy, same hometown as Miles Haskist. Yeah, Black Sheep 10 from Pirate way back in the day.
Yeah, like that was like 2005, so it's been a minute. And then, through, we all had our internet friends on Pirate, and then we started racing, and then we all, just linked up. And really kind of going back to some of your first episodes, and I've heard you talk about it quite a bit, was, King of the Hammers and Vegas Arena was what really brought all of us together in those early days.
And exactly, for Jonathan Terhune, those were inflection points for so many people in rock sports and going fast.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely.
Well, Kelly met you, Kelly Kaiser. He drives out to, it was Fort Bragg, right? North Carolina, where you were stationed at the time. You were in the military. He drove out there. He met you. And you guys were online boyfriends, right? I mean, Pirate 4x4. I think he put out a post like, anyone live in this area, and you chimed up and said, yeah, I do. And so he flanges up with you. And then when we go out to King of the Hammers, you guys reconnected, we get introduced to you. And then now, like I said, I think 12 years later, we have a text stream that you and I are on almost every day.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I was deployed in Afghanistan on through 14 and 15, and we were still texting the same group. It's insane. Actually, it's like from from hell.
And just recently you just did and we're going to talk about that as one of the best, craziest, most recent stories is you just drove your boat from Panama City Beach down to St. Thomas. How many days on the water? 16, 14,
18.
It's
funny. It's funny because my roommate from Panama City Beach, who interestingly enough is my girlfriend's ex-husband's friend. He's a roofing contractor. And I was like, Clark, we could run it hard, do it in 4 days. We'll take it easy. It'll take 8. Well, it took 18.
It's crazy.
But no, it was a good trip. We had a good time, and we'll dive into that here in a bit.
So here we are today. You're in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. Tell us what you do down there.
I'm just going to tell you the whole story. The Army nowadays and the military as a whole because, and I think the Army probably takes the biggest brunt of it with like homeless veterans. And, you know, if you see a homeless vet, since the Army is the largest branch, most people just default that it's a soldier from the Army. So when I got out of the Air Force in 97, it was pretty much like, all right, there's a door, you know, see you later. Well, nowadays there's like a process to get out. If you do 4 years and get out, or you do, you know, 50 years and get out, they make you go through all these classes. And for the guys like me who did 26 years, they're not that worried about us. There's a couple of mandatory classes, but if you're a 24-year-old kid and you get out on your first enlistment, they make you go through all those classes. And some of those classes are like, here's your resume, come in a suit. Now you're going to do a fake interview and go through the interview process, you know, because they care. They want to make sure that you're ready. And for us, it was like, all right, retirees, you guys good? You know, thumbs up, thumbs down. Well, I was in one of these classes and the lady said, and remember Wyatt, by this time, I'd already been running my own charter boat in Panama City Beach. Actually, we ran it in Key West, Destin, Fort Walton Beach, and settled at Panama City Beach. So I'd already ran the whole year, you know, with my own boat, my own business, my own customers, you know, yada, yada, yada. And this lady who's teaching this class says, all right, guys, hey, we got like 20 minutes left. Just go on this website. And it was like Indeed, like Indeed.com. And look at what you're going to do when you get out and compare the salary to other parts of the country. You know, police officer in Houston, Texas versus, you know, a police officer in Paola, Kansas, you know, just to see the same job, different salary. So I was like, all right, I'll play your game. So I typed up in charter boat captain. And what do you know? Ocean Surfari pops up. So I send my, you know, must be able to run 37-foot center consoles, be great with customers, and be able to catch fish. And I was like, well, all right, well, I can do all that stuff. I've been doing it. So I attached my resume and sent it. And within 30 minutes, the owner, Mark Blackburn, sent me a text or an email. He's like, hey, Rob, this is Mark from Ocean Surfari. I got your resume. Let's plan on talking this afternoon. And I was like, replied back like, yeah, no problem. After 5 Eastern time's great. So he calls me, and in the meantime, he had gone through fishingbooker.com with my Facebook page, you know, my Jessica Scholl's fishing charters, looked at reviews, looked at pictures.
He stalked you, right?
He did. And, you know, and I had a conversation with Kyle about this same thing tonight about make sure your social media is cleaned up. And, you know,
and we're talking about Kyle, your son, who we're going to talk about too. I love your son. He's got some amazing stories already at such a young age, but
yeah, I talked to him for like 40 minutes tonight. I was FaceTiming him from the marina and he was hating it. But anyway, so this job says, you know, must have had these skills, and I had them. And, you know, then he looked and kind of vetted me, and he says, at the end of the conversation, this is like December 16th, you know, why? It's like 6 months ago. And he says, Rob, you got the job. If you don't want it, fine, tell me so. But if you do want it, do not accept it until you come out here and check it out. Make sure that St. Thomas is good for you. Make sure that the area, the housing, the food, you know, make sure the fishery, the boats, make sure everything's good. So I was like, you know, fair enough. So Linda and I, my girlfriend, we booked tickets and flew over here in January. And I will say this, within 15 minutes of getting to the hotel, they already had a car for us, and we went into Red Hook, and the Amex was flying. Like, no kidding. Linda and I were wined and dined for 4 days. They would not let us buy anything. It was surf and turf. It was wine. It was, you know, cocktails. They showed us, met us, you know, introduced us to everybody in the store. I went fishing with Chris Rapchak for 2 days, you know, to see how they do it. And, you know, that we had a great time. We visited the whole island. We spent 4 days out here, you know, in January, where it's still relatively cold in the States, and it was beautiful out here.
It was 80 degrees.
Yeah, it's 83 and 73, like almost every day of the year.
No, I mean, I remember in December when you, after that call, like you came out of that call and you text our group and you literally said, guys, I think I just got a job in St. Thomas Virgin Islands. I think I'm out of here. We're like, what? No way. And remember at the time we were all booking travel to come fish with you in April in Panama City Beach. And you're like, hold off.
Yeah, y'all were all coming down in April.
Yeah. And then it didn't happen. But now, I mean, now we have an excuse to come to the Virgin Islands. Well, actually, anyone that's listening to this now has an excuse to come to the Virgin Islands. It's an easy flight. Go fishing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's an easy flight and it's cheap and it's great out here and you guys will love it. And, interestingly enough, though, like I always told, my thing with running boats, and it's really all I want to do, is if I had if I had it my way, I would run boats out of Key West. Well, the problem with running boats out of Key West is, it's kind of like farming. You don't just wake up one day and become a farmer. You either marry into farming or grandpa dies and wills you the farm. Like you just don't buy a bunch of land, a bunch of implements and go farming. Like it's a process. Well, down there, you don't get a boat slip unless you marry a captain's daughter or granddad, the captain, wills you that slip. And they don't want anybody down there that's not part of that crew. So Key West was out. So anyways, fishery wise, it's great down here. So it's like my dream job times 100. And I would work and, between talking to you guys, on the group text and then my buddies at work, they're like, Rob, what is stopping you? And I'm like, dude, I have to sell everything I own and move to the Caribbean. And they're just like, duh. Like, why would you not? And their thing was like, sell a bunch of stuff you don't need, sell it, go out there. If it doesn't work out, come back and buy a bunch of stuff you don't need.
Right. It's easy to do.
And when I put it like that, it made a lot of sense. And, and it's funny because when I was in recruiting, I was a special forces recruiter for a couple of years. And I'd tell these kids, it's like, you don't want front porch stories. When you're 75 years old, sit on the front porch, drinking your sweet tea, saying I woulda, shoulda, coulda, go do it. And if it fails, dust yourself off and do something else. So I told Linda, long story short, it took me like a week or two after I got back before I called Mark at Ocean Surfari and said, I'll take the job. Because it was a big decision. So
it happened though.
Crossed the job and then came out here and I sold my charter boat in January. The dude bought my charter boat. He bought all my tackle. I didn't have anything. So on the sport fishing boat, why not? Like I had to buy all new tackle, all new rods. I spent like $7,000 just in rods, reels, tackle, whatever. But, I was lucky enough to sell it and I had a huge liquidation sale of all this stuff I don't need. And the only thing I kept three things. My F-250, which is in Panama City Beach. I kept the KX-250, which is really a KX-300 that Kyle won the NOR on in 2015 or 2016. And then I kept my toolbox. Everything else went, man. Like everything went. I was a Craigslist and marketplace, demon, just fires.
Yeah, I know, like selling your stuff, there's a suck level to it, right? Like you're like, being attached to it, some sentimental stuff, or you're just like, I'm over it. But how was the process of actually dealing with other humans trying to sell them crap? That's why I'm a hoarder. And this about me. I'm a hoarder. I don't sell anything because I hate dealing with that other side of the transaction. How did you deal with it?
Most of the stuff I sold, I would set it on the front porch and say, hey, if you want it, leave the money under the doormat. And Wyatt, nobody ever jewed me down on price and nobody ever did me wrong. They like, hey man, I like it. It's underneath the doormat. I was like, okay, thanks a lot. And then I would delete the ad. Like that went on. It was like this whole January, February when I was selling all this stuff, like it was so easy. And then, it's, if you watch like American Pickers or those shows, they talk about breaking the ice. Once the ice was broken, like I would be looking for stuff to sell. Oh, I don't need this. I don't need that. And I would list it and be gone, but I had just years of stuff, man. And everybody knows how it is. And it's just stuff that I just don't use anymore. I don't have, I got parts for cars I haven't owned in a decade, so.
I'm so envious about that. I'm looking at you. I mean, I'm living vicariously through you. Like, I don't know that I need to come up with the wherewithal to actually sit down and be like, all right, I'm going to create an ad and I'm going to just start selling crap. I mean, it is what it is, but you made it over that hurdle. And I know so many people that are listening to this, actually probably 99.998%, literally the survival rate of COVID that's listening to this is having the same thoughts. Like, I hate dealing with people and that's why I haven't sold stuff.
And I'm telling you, normally I don't say, hey, swing by and sit on the front porch. If you like it, leave the money. If you don't, leave. But that's how probably 75% of that stuff was sold. Because, I was still working. And I had to go back to I was living in Panama City Beach, but I had to go back that last couple months and spend a lot of time at Fort Bragg to do the out processing thing. So I physically wasn't there with the stuff, and my roommate would set it out and they would come get it and he'd have the envelope full of money for me.
Very, very, very cool. We know where you're at. We know you've been fishing. We know we've got a big story coming up about how you drove a boat from Panama City Beach down to St. Thomas. We know you're in the military at one point. You did, well, for 26 years that we're going to talk about. We know you're into racing, but let's go all the way back to where's Rob from? I mean, who is this guy? What made him into who he became, and all the stories we're going to walk through in this next, short little snippet of your life that we're going to try to document some of it. But you're from Missouri, or at least initially at some point you were born in Missouri, right?
Actually, I was born in Kansas. My dad was a railroader, so he was living at, he was working out of Kansas City, Kansas. We actually lived on the Missouri side, but Bethany Medical Center is right across the river. So I was born in, I'm a Kansas guy. But then, once I was dried off, I was back across the Missouri. But I spent all my life growing up in Missouri. I graduated from Slater High School, which is Steve McQueen's childhood home. I don't think he liked it that much. And man, I've read some quotes like, "Hey, I'm leaving, and I don't know who's gladder that I'm leaving, me or them." But they still have Steve McQueen days, and his ex-wife has showed up, or his widowed wife, whatever, has showed up. So it's a big deal. It's 1,300 people. I graduated from high school in 1991 from Slater High School. And, 20 days later or 25 days later at 17, I was already enrolled in Wyoming Tech and went to Laramie, Wyoming. This was back when they only had like one campus. Like Wyoming Tech was in Laramie, Wyoming, and did the automotive program there. And, it was in the 90s, 91. I think I got out there in February 92. And the first Gulf War just ended. We're kind of in a recession. Nobody was really doing anything. And my girlfriend at the time had moved to Warrensburg, Missouri to go to CMSU. And I moved down there with her. Me and my buddy Dave were living in this little, trashy trailer. I was going to go apply at this alignment shop, the Hunter C111, D111, like that was all like the top dog stuff. And he says, "Hey, no problem. Fill out the application." And it was like a 1-page application. And on the back page, I turned it over and put welding and oxidylene cutting and, all that other stuff that most 18-year-old kids can't do. Well, on the farm they can, but, down in Warrensburg, which is a city. He's like, "Hey, I got your resume. I'm going to have a car on the rack tomorrow. So come in and we're running through an alignment." I was like, "No problem." Well, my girlfriend had a little S15 truck. And if you know anything about Chevys and alignments, and the cars and the trucks are just the same, except they're opposite. So if you know one, you know the other because it's the opposite. So I was studying up on alignments, road crown and camber and caster and toe in and everything. So I get down there after 5 o'clock that afternoon or the next day. He doesn't have a car on the racks. He says, "Hey, what'd you drive?" And I told him. So he's like, "Hey, bring your girlfriend's S15 truck on the rack and we'll just do an alignment." Well, no problem. I've been studying it for 2 days. So I get it on the rack and I compensate and jounce the suspension and, put all the heads on there and run him through a full alignment, what I would do and what I would adjust and, whatever. And the guy's standing there on it. I'll never forget this. He's standing there with his arms crossed. And he's like, "You know what, son? I'm impressed." He's like, "But to be honest with you, we just don't have enough work to hire somebody else to stand around and watch everybody else stand around." And I was so shattered that I went to the Air Force recruiter like that afternoon, like the next morning, I was there. Like I was signing up because none of these automotive jobs were panning out. 4 months later, I shipped off in the Air Force and I've just been in the military ever since.
Were you the same thing as like Chris Summers? You guys were both like munitions loaders or something like that in the Air Force?
We were both 4.62s, and actually I changed the AFSC, which is the Air Force Specialty Code, from 4.62 to 2W1. And I was actually schoolhouse trained on B-1 bombers, with both conventional and nuclear weapons. And then in 94, the BRAC, which is the base realignment and closure, they kind of realign everything. I got moved to F-16s, and I spent my last 2 years in the Air Force in Las Vegas. And, it was funny because I was stationed at McConnell Air Force Base, which is in Wichita, Kansas, 5 hours from where I grew up. And the whole 2 years I was there, Wyatt, not one single person came and visited me. 5 hours from the house. I wasn't in Las Vegas for probably 3 weeks, and I had visitors. And the whole 2 years I was there, I had visitors every 3 weeks. Somebody was coming from somewhere to come visit. So was it me or was it Las Vegas?
It was Vegas. It wasn't you. I promise.
Exactly. And it's funny because when people say, oh my God, how can you live in Las Vegas? Well, when you live in those places like that, like you're not downtown burning up the roulette table and the craps. Like you don't live like that when you live there versus vacation. So, we were riding dirt bikes all through the desert. I had a part-time job at Lee Canyon ski area running this ski lift. There's so much more to do once you get out, away from downtown and the strip.
Was that kind of where you found your love for the desert?
That was the first time I'd ever been in the desert, and it totally blew me away. And, we talk about it all the time. And it when I lived in El Paso, it would rain, and like that desert rain smell, like, what I'm talking about? Like when it rains, like, I don't know if it's the mesquite or what, but it's just that smell. And like, I will never forget that smell. And my first time I ever, was been around that was in Las Vegas in the desert out there. And, what I liked about it the most, being from Missouri, and you can relate to this, growing up in Kansas and even in Texas too, like we don't have public land like that. Like you can't just go.
Not at all.
You can't. You got to go through a gate. Somebody owns it. You're trespassing. But out there in the West, like it's just so open. It's vast and it's accessible and it's minutes away from your house. And we'd go out there and just ride, dirt bikes. I had a Blazer. My buddy had a Jeep. We would take the desert all the way from Vegas to Lake Mead and then, start a fire and drink beer and then hang out that night and sleep and then come back. Like there was just so much to do. And like that was like my first real experience of like just loving the desert.
So you're in the Air Force at this point. They never deployed you anywhere though, right? You stayed stateside your entire time with the Air Force?
Yeah, it was 92 to 96 or 93 to 97 or whatever it was. Yeah, and we deployed stateside for training, but nothing overseas. And then at Nellis, that's where the Weapons Academy is. So whenever you're watching Discovery Channel and you see these, these airplanes with WA, that's, the Weapons Academy. And basically what the Weapons Academy is, it's like the Navy's Top Gun school, but it's 6 months long. The pilots do 3 months of air to air, 3 months air to ground, and then we get a new batch. And, these are the best of the best. You got to have so many thousand hours of stick time, so many thousand hours of instructor pilot time. So, these are the best ones, and it's 6 months long. And once they graduate, they wear that patch forever, as a Weapons Academy graduate. They're super stressed out and they over-G the aircraft all the time, trying to get away. The F-14 Tomcats, they would lock the radar on them at end of runway. Like our jets are already taking off with our students. And then the aggressors would be at end of runway with these high-speed radars, not even taken off yet, and already have them locked on 80 miles away. So the students are super stressed, and they come back with cases of beer because once you over-G the aircraft, all the panels got to come off. It's got to be inspected. So it was a lot of long days out there on that ramp.
And so learning how literally honing your craft on spinning wrenches.
Oh yeah. And, we have this thing called CTK and FOD, which, it's your composite toolkit. All of our toolboxes, and anybody who listens who's been in the Air Force knows or worked in aviation, I can inventory 150 or 180 tools, whatever, in 10 seconds because everything's cut out in foam. You don't leave any tools. If you break a little star bit, taking a panel off, you'll get a new star bit, but you need to take all those little pieces back, and they're going to put them all together to make sure that there's not one left in there. So it really taught you, taking care of your equipment. Like you couldn't have any rust on any of your tools. And then the funny thing is I get in the Army and I work on tanks and we drop sockets in the turret and the boss would be like, don't worry about it. But, the stakes are different. In an aircraft, you drop a tool and it creates a malfunction. The pilot has to eject and the aircraft's a loss, and then the pilot loses his life possibly. Whereas on a tank, if there's a malfunction, then you just got a crew out there eating MREs for 3 days while you try to get to him and fix it. So the stakes are different, but, we definitely did a lot of mechanicking.
So you get out of the Air Force. What made you, or as you were getting to the point where you're up in the Air Force, what made you decide to re-up in the Army?
So what happened was, I had we call it the first term airman blues. You're 22, 23 years old. You think you know it all. And I just was like, I'm out of here. So I had 80 days of leave saved up. And I'll never forget this. I moved back to Missouri and the Liberty, which is just north of Kansas City. And I have all these days saved up. And I was for like 6 days straight, I just watched MTV. It was like the top 500 videos of all time. And I just sat there drinking beer, just like, totally just, I had no responsibility. And I had checks coming in every 2 weeks. I was on terminal leave. Well, the number one video was like Guns N' Roses, like November Rain. And I just like, oh my God, I just wasted 5 days of my life for nothing. So these checks stopped coming. And so I was working at Larson Storm Doors at the distribution center. And, when you're used to a set amount of, like, I had to work 3 jobs. I was catering, I was cutting meat at a price chopper, and I was working full time at Larson Storm Doors in the warehouse. And after about 7 months, I was like, I'm going back in. And I actually joined the Army to fly helicopters. And at the time, they had already met their quota on, pilots coming in, but they said, hey, if you just come in, go to your first duty assignment, put in your packet, it's complete, it's right here, and you will, your packet's good, but we just don't have any quota right now, from the non-prior service side. So I was like, all right. So join the Army, back to basic training, back to AIT up at Maryland. And then my first duty station was in Germany. But while I was at AIT, I went to a special forces briefing, and I was like, well, that's what I want to do. And the minute I got to Germany, I put in my request to go to, our assessment and selection course, and flew back to Fort Bragg, went to selection and assessment. And out of 400 people, 90 of us made it through. And of those 90, 60 of us got selected. So I did 5 more months at Germany. And then I, was PCS, which is, moved back to Fort Bragg to start training. And then that's what I've done since 2000.
And then we met you somewhere, not too many years after that. When I first met you, you were Special Forces at that point, Army, and I think you were bouncing back and forth. Now, so talk about some of the detailed things that you were doing, like your training, because I know you were spending time like once a year. You would be in Key West doing dive training, boat operating.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Like, and it goes back to the desert, and we're going to come back to the desert too. And it comes back, when we talk about KOH and Baja and everything else. But I went to dive. Truth be told, I was selected in the Air Force basic training to be a pararescueman, a PJ. And for some reason, I don't know why they picked me out of the group. So when I graduated basic training, I actually started pararescue training. Remember, I'm 19 years old. All I want to do is go chase girls, underage drink, all the stuff that all of us 19-year-old kids want to do. I wasn't in the right mindset to be locked down and do these horrendous workouts and get drowned in the pool every day. So I didn't make it through. So fast forward, when I'm in Special Forces, back in the qualification course in Fort Bragg, the opportunity to go to scuba school came. And I saw the skeleton in the closet of this training that I did that I didn't complete. So, they train us up, and we, our dive school is in Key West. So I went and I graduated, no problem. I couldn't do it at 19, but I could do it at 29. And that's, physically not much different, but mentally that's, I already had 2 kids. I was married. I was in a different headspace.
At some point, we went back as an instructor to that school, right?
Actually, there's 2 things. You don't just go to scuba school. You have to go through a pre-training. We call it pre-scuba or pre-CDQC. The course is called the Combat Dive Qualification Course. So what we did at Fort Bragg was we would take 30 students who wanted to be divers and run them through the mill, and then send 7 or 8 to Key West to be divers. So we did all the pre-training.
Okay. And is that where you would send, videos of you just taking the water hose to a kid's head?
Oh yeah. You're not going to drown on the pool deck, and they're doing flutter kicks, and their mask is full of water, and all this. They're called stress activities. First, Wyatt. Okay, they're called stressors, because anybody can do anything in perfect situations. So now let's start taking away some of your comfort items, like the ability to breathe, the ability to not be able to open your eyes and see. So we had to introduce them all this stuff. That way, when they get to Key West, they're already used to it. They know how to handle their body, and, they can handle the stressors and actually, let those guys at Key West take them to the next level.
And so this is something that absolutely fascinates me, is how much of that, you as a friend of mine, how much of that you've gone through, and then how much of that your mind is mentally prepared for, which is then you've been able to pull back on that knowledge from events in the desert where you've broken down, or events in NORA where you've literally had to repair, triage, triage to get to the finish line. Like it's very goal oriented.
You're right. And some people, I've been asked about some of that stuff. I went to dive school at 29. Then I went to Ranger school at 39. So I did everything kind of backwards, what people normally do. And I've been asked, like, does your military training help you do like this endurance motorsport stuff? And I was like, honestly, quite the contrary, because the stuff that we do in the desert, like, it's harder. You know, like when you're in the military, no matter what, there's risk assessments and there's safety things set up. Like, you know, I sent you those videos of those shenanigans that we were doing to those students, but we had medics right there. We had our battalion doc right there. Like, everything was controlled. When you're in the middle of Baja or you're in the middle of Johnson Valley and, you know, things go awry, it's you. So I always say that I was fortunate enough and, you know, I don't know, hard-headed enough to pass through some hard stuff in the military, but it wasn't until desert racing came along where, you know, I had to like up my game. So then every other thing I did in the military was even easier. I mean, there's risks that we accept out there, but no matter what, I don't, you know, in the Army, you're going to have somebody, there's going to be a truck to pick you up. There's going to be a helicopter to, you know, come get you if you're hurt. Well, out there, you know, it's you. And I credit a lot of, you know, our successes and just being able to, you know, do the things we did in the desert, or, you know, it started off being based on the military training, but as it progressed, the things I did in the military, I was crediting to being able to be out there in the desert and manage all that stuff when it's just you, when you don't have Uncle Sugar and, you know, all his assets coming to get you. It's, cause you know how it is. It is just you out there.
Oh yeah. A lot of the times. And you get that deafening silence when there's no one anywhere near you, which,
oh my God, I know exactly what you're talking about. The deafening silence.
Deafening silence.
Stay tuned. Your talent tank is in full get.
Do you know what the entire 2020 ULTRA4 Racing 4400 class King of the Hammers podium had in common? Brannick Motorsports Custom Machine. This small family-owned machine shop in Fort Wayne, Indiana, has been advancing off-road technology since 2003 by proud veteran owner Stan Haynes and his son Brandon, and a talent-heavy staff committed to pushing the motorsports performance envelope. If those names sound familiar, they should. Stan and Brandon have been off-road racers since before King of the Hammers was a thing, and both are pillars of Team Indiana. I'm always talking here on the Talent Tank about supporting those that support you. I'm struggling to think of a sanctioning body that Brannick hasn't supported in rock sports. ULTRA4, We Rock, Pro Rock, just off the top of my head. And I support these guys myself. My current daily driven pre-runner Chevy has numerous one-off custom pieces on it, from rear axle flanges to custom 5/8 inch lug nuts. I sent the crew at Brannick my ideas and they made them a reality. Between the Brannick lines of forged 4340 axle shafts all the way to their custom billet 300M shafts, Brannick has you covered with pretty much any custom axle shaft, any spline with no size or length restrictions. Need a rare oddball shaft for your Unimog? They have those as well. Sway bars, a large inventory of rod ends, big and small, their amazing specialized lightweight racing brakes, and unit bearings in numerous bolt patterns, onto their line of custom carrier bearings and U-joints in 1480 and 1550 flavors. And I about missed mentioning their amazing milled out aluminum suspension components, 70-75 billet aluminum links and trailering arms. If you haven't seen these, you're missing out on some very aesthetically pleasing pieces of hardware. Brannick prides themselves on quality, service, and value, proudly making parts that wear the Made in the USA moniker, no matter if it's for your daily driven Jeep, Toyota, Chevy pre-runner, or something more serious like your Rock Bouncer, ULTRA4, or trophy truck, you're covered with a call to Indiana. Did I mention I've met a land speed racing team that runs Brannick axles at over 300 miles an hour? Yeah. To ensure you eliminate your downtime while recreational wheeling this weekend, reduce your time in the shop turning wrenches on repairs, or looking to put your race car on the podium, call Stan and Brandon at Brannick, 260-467-1808, or on the web at brannickmotorsports.com. Brannick is a full-service machine shop that can handle everything from one-off to production runs. If they don't have it, they can make it.
Now, back to the show.
So you've done a lot of training in Fort Bragg. You've done a lot of training at a bunch of places. They bounce you around the world, and then they deploy you. You got deployed in 2014. I remember this when this all went down. You were a regular racer up until this point, and then Uncle Sam sent you to Afghanistan.
Yeah, I had a couple of good jobs. Like we deployed, like right when I got out of the Q course and, was an actual SF guy, within 1 week, I was in Afghanistan in 2003. And then we came back for six months, and then we're gone for 8. And then we were, back for 6 months and then gone for 8 again. Well, you got to remember the whole time, I've always been into four-wheel drive trucks. I think my Pirate membership number is like 3,000. I think they're over 100 and some thousand now. So, I was a member since 2000, 2001, and I've always, worked on stuff and built trucks. And in the meantime, when we were coming back on our breaks, I would take my my little Zook and do something to it. And then that morphed into the buggy. And 2007, 2008, I had a job at the dive locker where, we weren't deploying anymore. We would be gone training for, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, but we were done with the deployment for a while. At least I was. And that's when we started. And King of the Hammers happened, and it was kind of low key the first year. And then the next year it was a big deal. And I remember going to a training event in 2008 and, reading Crawl magazine and looking at the coverage of it. And then that is when it popped up on Pirate that anybody who wanted to do it could apply to do it.
We're jumping way. I don't want to get into King of the Hammers yet. I do, but I don't. I know where you're going. Like, you want to go chronologically, and man, there's so much, your depth and breadth of knowledge and adventure it doesn't do chronologically real well. I think we need to pack it in certain ways. So sorry. I'm going to pull you back. I'm going to pull the reins back out of King of the Hammers. So you've deployed multiple times, but then the time that I recall and was at least friends with you is when you went to Afghanistan, but you were gone for what, 18 months? It was quite a while.
Yeah, it was. I think we did 8 that time. That last time in 14, 15.
Really, only 8 months? God, it seemed like you were gone forever. I remember my wife and I putting together like care packages for you guys for Christmas or some holiday that year.
And so much awesome stuff. And I will tell even today, if a church group or you want to send a care package to like any soldier wherever. I'm telling you, people we get them all the time, and there's nothing better than. So if you never get a thank you note or whatever for a care package, rest assured that they are getting distributed, and they're awesome. Like, you send me all those T-shirts. I got triple nickel stickers sticking all over the place. So,
oh no, yeah, that was no, that reminds me. Yeah, you would regularly send pictures back of I don't know, a minigun attached to an Apache. And it'd have a triple nickel sticker, one of my race stickers stuck on the side of it.
Yeah. I was so appreciative to get that stuff to you. I wanted to like put it in a place that you normally wouldn't put it. You'll put it on the back of somebody's trailer, or you'll put it outside of a, I don't know, electrical box where everybody else's stickers are, tech and contingency somewhere. But I mean, would you stick it on a minigun? I don't know. Maybe not.
And then somebody, a few years after that, another person, I'm not even sure who it was at this point, but I feel like it was somebody that I met through you. They sent via Facebook, sent me a picture of something at Bagram Air Force Base of the triple nickel sticker stuck on something there, and was like, "When were you on Bagram?" I was like, "I wasn't."
Exactly. Yeah. No, because we would go there to get resupplied and stuff, and there's these electrical boxes of this whatever it was sitting outside the coffee shop, and everybody put their stickers on it, and and you'd see sports stickers, or team stickers, unit stickers. So I always make sure I had a 1999 and a triple nickel sticker, and I just put them both up. They're in vans. They bus us off these Air Force bases from the plane, to the hotel or whatever. And you get on these, Bluebird buses, and there's stickers all over them. And I'd put triple nickel stickers up there and just everywhere I could.
And speaking of the stickers, so in 2010, I'm headed out to Bonneville, and we're going out to Land Speed Racing. We're heading out to Salt Flats, and we took a different route, and it wasn't a route I'd ran before. And it was a route like up through Moab from Houston, going kind of through the Four Corners area up through Moab. And then from Moab to get to Salt Lake City, it's a little interesting, and there's not a ton of gas stations. And I don't know, at one point we crest, some amount of mountain and realize, I'm on fumes in the diesel. And so I'm just hoping this downhill, that at the bottom of this downhill, like 40 miles of downhill, that there's hopefully a gas station down there somewhere. We get down there and we find a gas station. I don't remember the name of the town, but it was like, I want to say it was like before Salina, Utah, somewhere in that area. I wish I remember the name of it. We roll into this place. I pump diesel. I'm walking in to pay, and it's the back door of the gas station, right? And I go to open it. Right where you grab the handle is a Usnick Motorsports 4406 sticker, and I started laughing.
Yeah, we did the tour, like I don't know, like an old Motley Crue T-shirt on the back where it had like all the venues for that year. And we were in the middle of nowhere going to Vegas to Reno in August of 2009. And we were sticking those stickers all over the place.
It made me laugh. I mean, we were in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was the absolute middle of nowhere. And to see something and know somebody that I knew had been there, I do feel like, I think it was Salina, Utah. It seems like it was close to there.
Yeah. You see that because you're running out of gas, because when we were pulling in there down that hill, like we were on fumes, not sure we're going to make it.
And then now today, at some point I'm going to mess this up, but at some point after Afghanistan, they stationed you in El Paso, or maybe you were in El Paso before you got deployed, somewhere right in there. You ended up in Texas. What was the story around that? Because I know when they transferred you back to Fort Bragg, you ended up staying with us here in Houston, and that hadn't been that many years ago.
No, that was 2014, and early part of 2014. So what happened is I was at 20 years, and I was trying to retire out west. You know, we had 2 side by side, like 3 dirt bikes, and I wanted to retire out west. And the only way I could do that was I took the Special Forces recruiting job at Fort Bliss in El Paso, and I was going to do my 3 years, retire out, and then try to find work somewhere out there in the Southwest. Well, wouldn't you know it, on the way out, I was moving, and you know how West Texas is out there on 10. You go through, 100 miles or so, or just their cell phone signal is just, it's crap. There's nothing. And I get closer to El Paso, and all of a sudden my phone just starts blowing up, and it's like, congratulations, man. Congrats. And I'm like, for what? They're like, well, you made the E8 list, Master Sergeant list. And, I was going to El Paso to be in an E7, slot. So I didn't know what was going to happen. And my commander in recruiting, who was actually stationed up in Washington State, said, hey, do not unload anything. Well, remember, Wyatt, I have a F-250 and a 48-foot gooseneck trailer with all my stuff in it, and a U-Haul with, my wife at the time, Kristen's Sequoia on it. So I had to make 2 trips back and forth. And I was like, what do you mean don't unpack my stuff? He's like, well, the Department of the Army may turn you back and go back to Fort Bragg. And I'm like, what? So anyways, we made some phone calls, and they ended up letting me stay there. But bottom line is, I was not going to do 20 years. I was going to do more. And so I did 3 years there as a master sergeant in an E7, sergeant first class spot, which actually worked out pretty good because, E8 has a lot more, clout walking in to talk to these kids' leadership than an E7, because I was talking right to their first sergeant, which was, first sergeant and a master sergeant's the same rank. It's still at E8. So it ended up working out pretty good as far as the recruiting gig go. But that's how I ended up in El Paso.
And that's how we all met Balls Itch Mitch.
Yeah.
That's how you introduced him to all of us. What a name.
The infamous Balls Itch Mitch was a regular Army recruiter that job in Special Forces recruiting, kind of as a career broadening assignment. And he ended up being my station commander.
And I ended up meeting him. The first time I met Mitch was out at King of the Hammers. Him and you mentioned him earlier, but we actually didn't mention him in full name. Matt Jab Nasty Enix. They were deciding to wrestle in one of the pit tents, and the story is completely inappropriate to tell on the show, but basically one of them screams out, if I'm going to wrestle, or I only wrestle naked. And they just stripped right there in the middle of the pit tent with 30 people standing around and Carhartts drinking beer.
Yeah, and it's 20 degrees outside. It was the most insane ever. And, that the funny thing about that year, well, with Mitch, his last name's Hawkinson. And when I met him, he walks up, I'd been there for a couple months already. No, actually, I got back from Ranger School, and he was a new center commander. He walks up, he's like, because, he's like 5 foot nothing. And he says that he's going to be mad when he hears this, but he's got, he walked up like, hey, my name's Hawk. And I'm like, oh, cool. We're giving ourselves, nicknames. I'm Nitro. Nice to meet you, Hawk. And I was like, your name's Balls Itch Mitch. And he looked at me all funny. When we went back out there in 2011, 2012, it was for the UTV race, I couldn't put Balls Itch Mitch on because he's my co-driver. So I put BAWLZ Itch Mitch. And then on my side, I had Rob Usnick and American flag. And on his side, I put a gay pride flag and put Balls Itch Mitch. And he didn't even know it until he got into the car to do the pre-run. He's like, you got me good.
Oh, he's a good dude, man. I like him. And you've brought out lots of guys that servicemen that have introduced them to motorsports and introduced them to the lifestyle and introduced them to the family. And yeah, you've got a lot of great friends and even friends that I've even stayed in touch with today because of you. Oh yeah, I was just getting texts from Fat Billy, and we'll talk about Fat Billy in a few minutes. Oh no. Oh man. Wow. Yes, he is an absolute piece of work. So when you were in El Paso, you had the opportunity to get out dirt bikes and all that stuff, right? Well, yeah. I mean, West Texas it's on the cusp of, what's the Southwest, and there's not much private property like there is, like what I was used to, growing up in, Missouri, and then even in North Carolina. I think we had like two. They closed Teleco down. So then we had URI, which I think has a total of 16 miles of trails. So I get to El Paso, and Kyle and I could literally, within 20 minutes, load dirt bikes up and be down the street in the desert and ripping. And on a Saturday morning, we could rip all the way to Las Cruces. I'd have a beer, he'd have a Coke, and we could rip back and have everything on the trailer, back of the house, washed, cleaned up by noon on a Saturday morning. Like, it was just, there was so much great riding, and, I don't want to say public land per se, but just like it's open out there. And it's, we see the Border Patrol and we let them know that where we're going, and they'd be like, yeah, no problem. But, just give them a little heads up. And we would ride dirt bikes and side-by-sides, like, everywhere, just all the time. And we're going to take a slight tangent here, actually back to something I would normally have covered way earlier, but we got sidetracked talking about some cool stuff. Your family, though, you're married for a long time. You went through divorce. You have two amazing kids from your first wife. You currently have your girlfriend that you've lived with for like 3 years. Your kids, Kyle, and then I always forget your daughter's name. Yeah, Sarah. And she starts this fall at Penn. Kristen kind of threw me a little bit of and you're going to kick out of the story. Kristen kind of like threw me a curveball. She's like, hey, Kyle's going to fab school, because Kyle's wanted to go to fab school since he was 10 years old, ripping around KOH on his 50cc dirt bike, hanging out with the dudes at the Traxxas, RC car tent all day long while we were doing what we do. So Kristen says, tell you what, you pay for Kyle's fab school and I'll pay for Sarah's college. Cause Kristen, who's still in the Army, is a military science professor at Shippensburg State in Pennsylvania. And she was under the impression that Sarah was going to go to Shippensburg State. And if that was the case, then it would be tuition free since, she was a faculty member. Well, out of the blue, Sarah's friend, her friend's big sister goes to Penn State and invited the girls up to a football game. And you know how those college football stadiums are, Wyatt. There are 100,000 people, like they're insane. And it blew Sarah's mind. So she comes back home that weekend and applies to Penn State main campus and gets accepted. Well, we're talking like $120,000 in total tuition. So Kristen calls me back and says, hey, can we renegotiate the kids' college? Because Sarah just got accepted into Penn State. So I was like, yeah, we can. So now we're splitting them both. Well, congratulations, though, to find out your daughter gets accepted at Penn State. I mean, Penn State's a very prestigious school. Outside of the Joe Pa, the ending story with the, Penn State football, Penn football. Right. It's still a very prestigious school. Very good programs. That's congratulations. Excited for, and, we were talking before the show about all of our sound equipment, which, guys like me and you, like this, like there's a lot more to this than just plugging and playing, but she's actually going to be a sound engineer. So she'll be used to meters and meters of knobs and dials and cords and cables to, to produce music and all that stuff. Yeah. That's, it takes some love, right. And it takes some hard knocks. I'm more power to her. I'm not an audio engineer. I've kind of developed into something of one, I'm better than a hack, but certainly not super qualified. Somehow we managed to get through. And then you're the same way, which I don't know, you guys listen, Rob has his own podcast. Like this whole conversation that happened last summer, last spring leading into last summer, where I was thinking about doing this whole show, the Talent Tank. Rob and I are bouncing ideas off of each other on this. And you've got one called the Fish Box. Initially it was for all around, all the fishing around Panama City. And now you have, you put it on hiatus, moving it to St. Thomas, and it's starting to come out.
Yeah. We talked about it last summer, and, one, we've always been friends, and I thought the idea was great. And if you really want to learn more about the drivers, the personalities, the industry, the racing, and all that stuff, podcasts are where it's at right now. So I love the idea of doing it. And then I got to thinking about my own little industry. There's no podcast for fishing in Panama City Beach. There's a couple down in South Florida and all that, but there was nothing. So I wanted to do a podcast where we did kind of long, same idea as yours. We drop a fishing podcast on Monday, and then we would do, an influencer or somebody else on a Wednesday or something. But it was to get, because believe it or not, farmers, travel agents, people still use travel agents. I have a friend from Missouri who's a travel agent. Why? Because when Farmer Bill wants to go on vacation, they don't sit down and Expedia and shop around. They tell the travel agent, this is how much time I have. This is how many people are going. This is how much money I have to spend. And this is where we want to go. And these are some of the things we want to do. And the travel agent plans the whole trip. Well, I thought travel agents were a thing of the past. No. So what these people do, I found out, and the same thing with you, Wyatt, and you know it because I read it on Talent Tank. We're driving to work. It's an hour and a half. That's a Talent Tank episode. They're in a tractor for, 10 hours a day. They're listening to podcasts. Steve Harvey's gone. There is no more 61 country WDAF out of Kansas City where you can listen to talk radio. Podcasts are where it's at, especially nowadays with everybody having a smartphone in their hand. So your podcast to learn the things that we've learned about all these personalities, which most of them I know, but some of the other guys I had no idea about. Casey Gilbert, what a fantastic story that was. What a great podcast that was.
He's a damn right too. We need to go back. I think Casey's podcast was good in the sense that he'd never heard what the Talent Tank was. He bought in on because he was episode 3. He hadn't heard of any of this, and Lauren Healy the same way. I'll get back to visit him, but yeah, Fishbox, you got to check it out. It's available all the same places that you guys find the Talent Tank, and Rob's got some pretty crazy stories on there.
Season 1 I haven't dropped it yet, and I have a couple great guys here. And for anybody who's into fishing, and even if anybody wants to come on vacation to St. Thomas, there's a lot of great things to do here that's not fishing, and it'd be one of those great pre-vacation listening to get kind of a feel for the area, especially if you've never been out here before.
You do a really good job of covering a lot of information for your area. And I'm excited to start listening to it about what goes on around St. Thomas and the U.S. Virgin Islands. I've, sailed around the British Virgin Islands, but I know very little about the USVIs. And now that you live there, and then I have a fraternity brother that runs a restaurant on St. Croix, that we need to come down and visit. But between those two places, and then how much my wife and I love Puerto Rico. I mean, I absolutely love it there. So the part of the world that you're living in is something that is an area that I really enjoy spending life and aspire to one day be able to sit on a porch and tell those front porch stories in that area.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Yeah, I want to not even circle back, but we started talking about Kyle. I remember him, on the lake bed. He's, kind of like a Cody Knoll, growing up, seeing those guys that when they were kids running around the lake bed during King of the Hammers. Kyle was one of those boys. And then he aspired to go to Fab School. So he started Fab School this semester, right? First of the year.
He's supposed to start in August, and then it got moved to September. And then they didn't have something happened. They started in November. So started in November. And, he's ate up with it. How it is being a kid of, you watch dad build stuff and I'm kind of like a hack. I really wasn't schoolhouse trained on, metal fabrication. Just kind of bought a JD squared, read Bender's Bending Tube 101 on Pirate back in 2000, 3 or 4. And then just, kinked a lot of tubing had a lot of scrap, but we built roll cages and we built the buggy. So Kyle's always been around it and he's always wanted to go. So like there was never any wavering with him. Like that's what he wanted to do, being around trophy trucks and all the ULTRA4 cars. And that's what he wanted to do. So he went. And then with the COVID thing, California was really on lockdown. Actually, they still are. And around the middle of March, he wasn't doing anything. So his mom flew him back to Pennsylvania, and he got a great job, as a welder, 19-year-old kid. And he's making good money. And I told Kyle, I was like, you've got to go back, because I was kind of thinking that he wasn't. If you're 19, all of a sudden you get a lot of money coming in, you can change your plans, but like at least go out there and finish. So Fab School called around the middle of May and said, hey, we're resuming classes in the first week of June. He's like, yeah, no problem. I'll be out there. So I think he's going to graduate around the middle of July right now. So he's excited, and he wants to be in the industry. And to be honest with Wyatt, he really wants to get down there in your neck of the woods, in that South Texas, Houston area. And I told him, I was like, Kyle, listen, you're young, responsibilities are you don't have many. And if you get with one of these fab shops who are, their customers are racers, then they're going to go out there and race with them, like Tribe 16, like, Adam and those guys build those cars, and then they'll go out to KOH for 3 weeks or longer, or whatever long it is. It's like, that's where you need to be. Don't get wrapped up in production welding just yet. Production welding's not going anywhere. You can make that your 9 to 5 when you get older, but go out there and live this stuff that you've been doing for the last 10 years and, embrace it.
Well, I'll tell you what, the conversations that, David Hartman and Nick Nelson and myself have had around the mini jet boats. And then that came out on last week's, Talent Tank podcast with us talking about that. Turns out there is a lot of interest in the ULTRA4 community for those. Dude, I think Kyle could be booked up through the end of 21, just welding and fabricating and putting together just assembly and making these things turnkey, mini jet boats. I think the North Texas guys, myself, Nick, I think there's an ability for this, if he were to get into it, I think he'd have a line out the door, people going, hey, I want one. Here's all the stuff to make it happen, and we'll pay you.
Exactly. And, there's people out there like that. And I just didn't want him to get caught up in, and there's nothing wrong with production welding, but not for a 20-year-old kid. Like he needs to go do the stuff.
He needs to experience all the different experiences and learn all the different little things. If he only learns how to weld a TJ bumper and weld 16 of them a day or whatever that is that he would do sitting in basically a cube farm for welders, that's not for him.
No, it's not. And, maybe him at 25 or 30 or 35 when he has a couple kids and needs some more stability. Yeah, of course. Production welding is not going anywhere anytime soon. But, I've seen his work, and, he was already a good welder because he, messed around on my machines. But, he's really taken to the next level out there, and he stays late after class. And he struggled a little bit with stainless steel, but, he figured it out. He's a smart kid.
And this kid at 15 is a NOR 1000 champ.
So, he is. And, he won the 2-stroke only class on a KX 250 that I bought or built. That's the only dirt bike I have left. I sold the Husky, sold my KTM, sold everything else, but I kept that one. And, he went down there with us in 2015 and kind of chased on his little 4-stroke dirt bike when we took just the Husky. And we went down there, and when we went back to NORA in 2016, we raced, a KX or a KTM 500 in the overall, the big boy class. We raced a Husky and a Super Vintage, and then Kyle, Fat Billy, and this another friend of ours, Darren, raced the KX 200 or KX 300, 250, the 300 kit. And, they won the 2-stroke only class, and I added up the miles, and Kyle raced like 850 of those miles. And, he's 15 years old. He crashes the bike, because we all crash. We crash the bikes. It happens. And he pulls it out of the ditch. He gets the El Arco. He runs out of gas. The Husky comes by and gives him gas he dumps his spare gas in. The Husky gives him gas. Then we have, little 1 ounce bottles of oil in there that you can mix with gas that you buy. There's 2,000 pesos and a sat phone and all that stuff in the bag, the typical stuff that we carry. Finally, he's trying to find gas, and he's 15 years old in El Arco, walking around trying to buy gas. And then the Mag 7 guys say, hey, the pit's down the road. Well, that's the other thing. We had it all scheduled out, and the pits were supposed to be 50 to 60% of that day of that leg's miles, and they weren't even close. And I knew Kyle was in trouble because it was 150 mile stage or whatever. And I knew when I went past, it was 130 mile stage. When I got past 90 miles, I still didn't see him. I was like, well, Kyle's screwed. Like and we're running 3rd overall behind Ricky Johnson. So I was like, well, Kyle's screwed. Nothing I can do about it. He'll figure it out. And then, he got the gas, they feed him sandwiches while they kind of like massage the steering back into like where he could ride it from the crash. And he finished the stage. We prepped the bike, and he left the next morning, and that went on and on. And, my mom or my stepmom and my dad had flown down to Cabo and were waiting for us. And, we got 3rd overall. My buddy Chris Hart and I did. And then the Husky came through, then Kyle came through, but we're watching him on the tracker. And I kid you not, Wyatt, they've got a clear gas tank on it. If that race would have been 2 miles longer, he would have been pushing that bike, because he literally had about 5 ounces of fuel in that, 3.5 gallon gas can on that, or gas tank on that dirt bike. So, we had it's kind of like Captain Ron. Well, we're there. How do you know? Because we had just enough gas to make it, and we're out of gas.
There you go. And this wasn't like, you just strapped Kyle on a bike and threw him into a race. You guys had ridden a lot. He'd ridden a lot. I recall, I think you guys did like a Parker, Arizona to Vegas ride at one point where you guys, you got out Google Maps and you plotted a course, and you and Kyle just vanished into the desert for 4 or 5 days or something. I thought that was pretty damn cool. Yeah.
We did like a 5-day vacation all through Lake Havasu, Las Vegas, all down through, the other little town on the river there in Nevada, Laughlin. And, Kristen and Sarah would drop us off, and we would just ride. And we spent we rode for 3 days straight, just all through the desert, and he's been on dirt bike since he was 4 years old. So, he's definitely no slouch with the dirt bike. The only thing he's not that great at is motocross. And, those kids, and anybody who does motocross, Chris Ridgway and all those guys that we were familiar with, that mentality of grip it and rip it, like you have to grip it and rip it, because God forbid you come up short. And so Kyle really wasn't he did motocross at an earlier age, but the desert is where he just started shining. Like that's when he would rip out, the whoop sections in El Paso on those roads. There's just miles and miles and miles of whoops. And Kyle just like, wank, 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 and not even waver, like just hit them. So the desert's shined.
Yeah, he got really good at reading terrain.
Oh yeah. And the only bad crash he had, we were in El Paso, and he had a little KX 125, and I had the 250, and with the same 250 that I ended up building for him to race Nora. And we had this little lap. We did like 7 mile lap just around, and I was putting the bike back on the trailer, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna take a lap real fast. I was like, yeah, go ahead. So he takes off, and he's coming back around, and this is like a big, not a parking lot area, but it's a big open area. And these 3 little Mexican chicks got out of this car. They're all about his age, 14, 15, with their dad or whoever. And he comes out of this little wash and jumps, but the wind caught the bike because he's trying to show off. The wind kind of blew the bike over a little bit, and he wadded that thing up. And I had to like pour him back into the truck, and his knees were messed up. So we go to the hospital in El Paso, and I got to call Kristen, to make the phone call to mom's never fun. And Kyle ends up getting like 40 stitches in his knee. Like it was bad. It was bad. And I'd walked out to go move the truck, so I dropped him off in the ER. And when I came back up there, Kristen was there, and they'd already given him, morphine. I was like, Kyle, how you doing, man? He's like, Dad, I'm doing just fine. But yeah, they did 40 some stitches in his knee, and it was pretty bad.
Now, didn't he have a dog like bite him in Mexico, like while he was riding?
Oh no, that's when we were coming back from. We were coming back in 2015. As a Steve McQueen fan, all I wanted to do is ride wheelies on the beach like Steve McQueen. That dog on the beach, they wanted to play with him. Like they wanted to play. They would chase you, and then once once the bike stopped, like if you just stopped, then they would surround you with their tails wagging, but then you take off, they would go back into attack mode. So, okay. Yeah. So Kyle rode down the beach. Dogs were chasing him. He was scared. He ran him to the hotel where we were staying at. And the dogs kind of had him like, he pulled into a park line. He couldn't get out. And the dogs kind of like set up a little barricade. Finally, me and Billy went over there and got the dogs out of the way. And Kyle ripped down in front of that hotel and went right down the beach, 10 feet from the outdoor seating area, and just dusted everybody out there eating. And within 10 seconds, the dude's walking down to the suit saying, "Hey guys, no more of the dirt bikes," because he just dusted out everybody out there enjoying lunch.
Oh, that's I mean, that's completely believable, right? That's exactly what you do when you're 15.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. Actually, that was 2015. He was 14 then.
Oh, he's 14 years old in 2015.
Stay tuned. Your talent tank isn't full yet.
For the past 10 years, there has been a group of individuals working hard, pushing the limits of what's possible with suspension spring technology. Today, that group has opened some exciting new doors, stepping out with the release of their own line of premium high-performance coil-over springs. Magnitude Performance Suspension is now up and running at their new complex deep in the heart of Texas, manufacturing their new line of premium chrome silicone springs right here in the USA. While the name and location is new, the crew at Magnitude is anything but, with extensive multi-genre racing application experience, including 10 plus years specifically testing, tuning, listening to, working with, and answering the needs of Ultra4 and off-road racers alike. I'm ecstatic to have Magnitude on board as a partner of the Talent Tank, and I stand behind their products as I'm a customer of this team myself. When I was building my last race car, I reached out to now president of Magnitude, Jason Yode, about his sway bar design. He built a sway bar to the specs he calculated for my application, and it was 100% dialed in right out of the box. That almost doesn't sound real, but it happened. Proof this team at Magnitude knows suspensions, springs, sway bars, what works, what doesn't. And I haven't even mentioned their line of valve train springs. They do those as well. LS, LT, diesels, drag racing, duals, and triples, they've got them all. No more waiting around for springs to be made, back ordered. All the while, you could be testing and tuning your vehicle and practicing your best podium pose. Magnitude has over 10,000 springs in stock. That's over 225 different lengths and rates. These guys have embraced technology with real-time inventory status on their website, so enthusiasts and competitors can order with confidence that Magnitude has the parts you need when you need them. I know I mentioned that they are in Texas. That makes me proud, but that also means they are centrally located for quick shipping to your door. No more right coast waiting on California or left coast waiting on North Carolina. Give the team at Magnitude a call at 866-674-1516 or hit up their website, magnitudeperformance.com. Mention you are a fan of the Talent Tank or use online code TT10 and get a special 10% discount.
Now, back to the show.
So let's jump back to you and motorsports. And like, I know you, when you were at Bragg, you were into off-road. I mean, obviously you've been on Pirate since 2000, 2001. You end up wheeling a little bit with some guys who I thought Nick Nelson had been involved with, but he'd been involved with the other guys, the Dixie Crawlers, but the Mud Devils, like Travis Watford and company. And then somewhere in there, you decided to build your Samurai buggy, and that's the buggy that we know you from competing in We Rock, and then you for King of the Hammers.
Yeah, so I had a little Zook that I bought off eBay, and I never was a Jeep guy, and I've just recently bought my first Jeep. I'm 46 years old, and I mean, you live on an island, you buy an island Jeep, they're just easy. But I wasn't really in the Jeep thing, I don't know why I was or wasn't, but the Samurai is what I always liked. I thought they were roomy, they're small, they're cheap, they're fun. But it's like most of us, the more you start beating on it, the more you start removing stuff. And finally, that's when I decided, like in 2007, we're just going to build a buggy. So I built a buggy based off, it had a Zook hood, all Zook drive tank. I think it might have Toyota axles. And then we competed in the We Rock Southeast Regionals. And, the Zook was like, 100 horsepower, 42-inch sticky IROCs, a 6.5 to 1 transfer case, had 529s and ARBs. It was a rock crawling machine. And, we ended up winning that little series. But Travis was coming down there, Greg Stone, the Mud Devil guys. And then in the meantime, the Mud Devil guys were actually hosting races. They were doing these little races up there, like club members and, $25 pot, winner take all or whatever it was. And the summer before I built the buggy, I was in my little snow camouflage Zook, and Kristen and I did this race with the Mud Devils. And that night we had a military ball. So in the trailer was my dress uniform and her ball gown. We're doing this race, got 5-point harnesses on, and it's kind of like a little rock crawling section. Well, the harness had rubbed her neck on both sides, gave her like these hickey marks. Well, we finished the race, had a couple beers, and then we took off for Fayetteville for the ball. Well, Kristen goes to put her gown on, and her neck is just red as it can be from those 5-point harnesses, rubbing on her neck. But yeah, we did a lot of wheeling with the Mud Devils from the early days. And, I saw, Jim building those buggies, saw some of the first ones he built. And then we were racing with the Mud Devil guys up at URI when they had the URI Fest or whatever it was, when Greg Stone flipped his buggy over upside down in that pond. Some scary time.
Oh, that's right. I do remember that. Yeah. It was the downhill with the right-hander at the bottom of it. And all you saw was the Maxxis, like 2 Maxxis sticking out of the water.
Yeah. Think back, Wyatt. I mean, this is like 2007, and, an LS, even 400 horsepower in a LS, in a buggy was a lot, not like it is today, but that was a big deal when we're all used to 6-cylinder Jeeps and, maybe a little TBI Chevy. But when the LSs came along, that buggy was fast and it was just loose, and it was the off camber, and it just, we're racing, and how we all lose our mind when the window nets go up and the helmet comes on, and it just got away from Greg. And I will always say this, what saved Greg was, 1, we were all there fast, but 2, in those XRR days, or the XRRA days, you guys had to do a blindfolded, full seatbelt, helmet, window net, get out of your car. You had to be, then they test you guys.
Fire. Yeah. Fire.
So that's what saved Greg, because he was racing with, XRRA guy, with you guys. And when he was upside down in that water, he went back to his training and, got out.
I remember just seeing the picture of that buggy. Man, I wonder what he's up to these days. I haven't heard that name in,
I'll tell you what,
10
that
years.
Dude is a monster on a dirt bike. He does a lot of dirt bike riding now.
Oh, that's awesome that we bring that back up. And then in 2009, Dave it's fall 2008 at this point. Dave and Jeff Knoll, they put out the beacon or whatever about this race, right? We kind of seen it we knew about it from 07, the OG 12. Then we see, how many guys raced it in 08? I think I should know this, but it feels like 42.
42, I want to say
43, somewhere in there. And then in 09, was there 90? Was that the number? It was capped at 90, but then I think 100 raced.
Yeah, it was something like that. And when that issue of Crawl magazine came out that summer of 2008, that's when I poured over those pictures, and I had my buggy halfway done. We're getting ready to do another URI race. I know it needed some work to go fast. So that's on Pirate that fall. They put in the, apply now. So I filled out the little application, and then the Crawl magazine had this King of the Hammers logo. And I took that to my steel cutting guy, and he cut this thing out. It was big. It was bigger than a photo book. Cause when I sent my application, I sent it in a photo book with all pictures of me building cars with the kids, my little resume. And then, a double-sided sticky tape. I had this big, huge, cut out aluminum logo, and I put it all in a box and sent it off, and I'll be damned if I didn't get in. And it gets even crazier a little bit. Jody Everdeen, Bob Rogie, we were all racing in Mexico that following fall, or in 2008 for the 1000. Jody was down there, and they were doing the very original King of the Hammers video where they, Eric Anderson, I think, was there, and they were just talking about the race from the 2008 race. And Jody told me, he's like, dude, I was there when they got your package, and when they opened it up, they said, I don't know who he is, but he's in.
Nice.
But Jody was like, yeah, I was there when they got that box, and they were like, dude, he's in.
What a great story. And then 2009 Vegas to Reno, I don't remember. I mean, I remember, believe me, I remember very well how I met this guy, Matt Enix, and from the ULTRA4 Racing world, he was the guy who, whenever you see any UTV racing, he is the one with he has the rooster bolted to the top of his roll cage. He raced multiple years with it on the top of his roll cage, led a couple years. What year was the year he almost won? And then he had a flat like 3 miles from the finish, and Mitch Guthrie ends up getting another win.
11, 12, maybe 13. It was right in there.
Somewhere right in that window. But yeah, I remember I met Matt in Oklahoma, Disney, Oklahoma, for like a King of Hammer style. It was called the Disney Challenge, DC 3 or something like that. And Matt was there. And because of that relationship with him, which he's crazy, by the way, and you know this, absolutely know this. He's a nutball. We love him, but that's why we love him, is because how crazy he is. Actually, I had a 35-minute conversation with him on the phone today about just some BS. But he reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, man, you guys are going out to that Vegas to Reno. I'd like to go. I'd like to go do that." And I was like, "Man, I wasn't controlling. We were on that whole Team Unite deal going." He goes, "Man, I was like, you know what? Rob Usnick is going. I'm certain he wouldn't turn down some pit help, And so I paired you two together, and I'm sorry about that. Like, I apologize now. I mean, what the last 12 years of you being friends with that guy, amazing, right? But he shows up in Vegas. You meet him for the first time. Next thing you know, you guys are welding on your car on the loading dock at the Paris. Was that how it went down?
He was pulling in the town right as we were, and we were going to come in on the north side, because remember we drove to North Carolina. So I've been driving for 2 days straight. We get out to the north side, and I wanted to go run the car real fast in the desert just because I never have. And I knew some places out there north of the Nellis Air Force Base where we could do it. And Matt was like, "Hey, I'm coming. I'll be there." And I never met this kid before. So we get out there, we unload the buggy, and we rip around for a few minutes. And Matt shows up, and he's got his, I don't know, with a Duramax crew cab with the big Miller welding.
Oh yeah, it was full on Texas redneck diesel dually welder. It was a total welding rig.
So we get back, we meet, and he follows us back to, I think we're staying at Bally's or Paris, one of those two right there off the strip. And something happened where we were trying to the rear end was something messed up. Well, it's August in Las Vegas. And we noticed that all the big straight trucks and delivery trucks are driving up the ramp and going inside. So we went over there and asked those guys, like, "Hey, we got to do some work on this car. We just drove from North Carolina. We're racing Vegas to Reno. It's hot as hell out here. Can we come in and work on the car?" And Wyatt, they were like, "Of course you can." Like, yeah. And I was like, we're going to lay down tarps and all this stuff. So we took the rear end apart, and, we used Matt quite a bit. He welded on it then. We got I think the ARBs, something was messed up on it. So we had the whole rear end apart, got it fixed up. And, in the air conditioned loading dock of Paris or Bally's, whichever one it was, then we took off for the race, and we didn't make it 35 miles on day one. And the rear end, I just had the ring and pinion just installed. The ring gear bolts had backed out. Not what we did. We were welding on something else. I don't have a new third member. So we called the junkyard in Vegas, and they had, because I had FJ80 axles on it, they had a third member with 410s. So Fat Billy and Danette and Braylon hopped in their rental car and drove as fast as they could, 110 miles back to Vegas, the junkyard. The guy waited for him to get there, paid, $400 for it. They brought it back. Well, since the front was 529s and the back was 410s, I was like, well, at least we got it welded up to make a locker. So, Matt welded that thing up, welded the Spiders gears together. And we didn't have any trouble with the rear end, that's for sure. I mean, she was locked up. But, he followed us up. And, we were getting to the pits at night. And you show up to a desert race with a welding truck, you're everybody's friend. And
Best
people
friend.
were Matt welding on cars all night long. Every night we stopped.
Yeah, he did do a lot of work. He said he worked his ass off.
Yeah, but no, Matt's a great dude, man. And I'm, indebted to you for linking me up with him. I'm indebted to him for, making the drive. And I told him, I was like, I will pay for everything you eat and, your diesel all the way to, Reno and back to Vegas. And then after that, it's, on you. But no, I covered all of his rooms, and, I was glad to have him part of the team.
So there's an epic story though that comes up right shortly thereafter, and it was epic enough that it even made ULTRA4 released like this past year this top 10 best drivers, top 10 most epic moments, and as they did the countdown, I think Alan Johnson was putting them out there. I mean, I know it's a big team of media guys over there at ULTRA4 Racing handling their social media. It's a team effort, but as they do the top 10 countdown, on day 10, it's number 10. They just count down. We get to day 2 and it's you at Rausch Creek, the RCQ, and walk through that day and what happened at the end of that race, because it's epic. It really was. It's camaraderie at its finest.
No, it was, Wyatt, and you're right. And, before I tell that, Will Gentile and what he did in the early days really put ULTRA4 on the map. The DVDs of the races, the DVDs of the qualifiers, like what he did is what made, I think, was kind of like the catalyst that kind of put it where it is now. And would it be as big as it is now if it wasn't for him? I don't know. I don't think so. I think, the DVDs and all that stuff's kind of like gone by the wayside with the way live coverage is, but Will Gentile did a great job of really capturing that day. And, so it's October. When was that race? 2009 or 2010?
Oh, no, it was was it 10 or was it 11?
We just got back. I was like, May. Anyways, we were trying to qualify to go back out there. When we raced KOH in 2009, our first time, we were in over our heads. Actually, we were always in over our heads every time we went out there. But I think, we made it to aftershock and then broke an axle and fixed it, but timed out. So we were trying to get back out there. And the best way to do it was, pick up the pieces, get the car back together, and then go to Pennsylvania in May and try to re-qualify for 2010. And, as we're driving this race, I mean, the little Zook buggy was always a great rock crawler. And trust me, that thing, it was a crawler, but it wasn't fast. And the only way we could make it fast is you really had to drive it over the edge. And as we were doing this, we were losing parts. Like, the shocks are breaking off, and like the shocks themselves were breaking. And we had ditched the spare tire, and I had one lap to go. I told Billy to get out. I love Fat Billy. He's been with me tens of thousands of miles back and forth across the country. But I was like, listen, Billy, I got one lap to go, and, I only got like 50 minutes to make it. So we came into the pits. It was like, just splash the gas and we're getting out of here. So by this point in the race, everybody either broke, finished, or, called it. We were coming around and there wasn't a whole lot of lap traffic to deal with. Actually, there wasn't any. And the very last part on the man-made rock crawling course, me and Billy hit it like, I think it was like 5 or 6 laps. The previous lap's not a problem. Just kind of let the nose come off. Once the front tires sit, just give it a little gas and it pulls right out of it. Well, me being overzealous and seeing the finish line right there, knowing that time was ticking away, I came off a little too fast and it goes up on the stinger. And I would just remember staring right through the windshield or right through to the ground, going like, oh my God, please don't go over. And then slow motion, it just went over, then I was just like, well, now what? So the rules of the race are, people can help you as long as they're racers. Well, everybody's at the finish line right there waiting to do the awards. So they all ran up and helped me flip the car over, and then it wouldn't start. I think I had GSXR 750 throttle bodies on it, and the throttle cable had broke or something or whatever it was. I couldn't get it to start. So finally I just floored it, put the butterflies all the way open and tied it off, and then just hit the kill switch. I got it to start, but it was on the rev limiter. And then this was going backwards and backwards and backwards, just hitting the on off switch. And if you watch the video, you can see the lights, wired into the ignition coming on and off, because that's how I was trying to drive it. But we swing the car around, we come across the finish line, and I was just like, did we make it? And then that's when Dave was like, no, you didn't. But we came to get 10 racers, and I think I was 11th one across, but oh my God.
Will Carter
had won, and he was already qualified from the previous year. So Dave was like, we came to get 10 drivers, and you're the 10th driver. And, it was just a big deal. And I think Will Gentile did a great job of capturing that, because he was there. And, that's what made it so epic. And, I'll never forget it. It was a great it was a great day.
It really was. And the video on that's really good. I have no idea where it is, but I know as soon as Will hears this, Will will have that catalog. His mind works that way. He has a mental catalog of exactly where every file is saved and how he has them done. And I'm sure he'll pop it up. Queuing Will.
On the DVD was, I think it was Rausch Creek, The Road to the Throne or whatever. Like chapter 10 or 11 is called like the Usnick finish. And I don't know. I just think that it captured, the spirit of the racers, the spirit of the race. I think it just captured everything. And in those early days, I think that was really important for what the sport is and how it's kind of developed to where it is now.
No, fully and absolutely. And I think there was some standards set by some guys like the Campbell family and what Shannon did to set some standards. And we've all kind of abided by them. And that's one of them. It's the camaraderie first.
Oh, without a doubt.
And then after that, I mean, yes, you had some stuff in the Zook. Eventually you finally sold it, all 100 horsepower of it. All 3 gerbils were just happy to be retired. It was an amazing day.
Well, I will say this, Wyatt, before I sold that thing, we had raced that little car from coast to coast in like 9 different states, from Pennsylvania all the way to California. I think at one time it might have been the most, like there was never an ULTRA4 car that had raced in like 9 or 10 states, whatever it was, because we were just dragging that thing. We were hitting all these little races locally. We were racing South Carolina, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. Like we were racing it, and we were always outgunned, but No,
you were out having fun though. I mean, that was the thing. Like you knew there wasn't like a win out there for you, but you were there for everything else. Just to say you did it, to overcome the adversity. And you continue to do that, like, man, with reckless abandon, continue to set up adversity in front of yourself just to see if you can climb over it.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if you do it on purpose or it's completely by accident.
No, I just say, I don't know if it's ignorance or what it is, but I don't know.
You graduated the other direction, right? You went from like the 4,400 class, you graduated down to UTV. You started racing UTVs for a while.
Well, yeah, my side-by-side, I bought it from this kid out in Corona, California. And, for the day, this is kind of before the razors really took off. If you want to go fast in UTV, you took a Rhino and you modified it. And this thing already had long arms and a nice cage and a built engine. And I didn't buy it to race. We just happened to buy it and had fun in it. And then all of a sudden UTV race started and we started racing it. And then of course, then it's a $10,000 engine. And then it's, this and that, and it's king shocks and bypasses. But that was a fun car too. And, we ended up finishing KOH in 2012. I think we won back when they had like classes. I think we won the production 750 class or something like that. And then the next year we took it to NORA, and and again overhead with that too. But I had a guy come out, Eric, and he co-drove with us, and I had one man pit crew, Balls Itch Mitch. And that's when we had the big fire that got all out of control on Facebook. And, people were calling me like, what happened? People were on fire and people died. Like, what? No, Eric burned his hands. He's fine. Well, actually he wasn't fine, but it wasn't as bad as what the grapevine had made it sound by the time I got back. So we ended up finishing that race after we fixed the car back up. But, we raced it all over too. We raced it in Texas, the BRT races. We raced it in New Mexico with with the New Mexico off-road series that they were racing up there. It was fun. And, the problem with the Rhino was when I put that Rotax engine in it, that's when you start finding the other weak spots. And the weak spots was always the front diff. And I just couldn't we ripped the spider gears out of them. It was just too much power, and I never forget Jeff Grass. We unloaded that buggy out of the trailer and pulled the engine out. And Jeff Grass he built that engine in the trailer right before KOH in 2012 or 13.
Jeff's an awesome dude. Grass Valley, California, MJ Motorsports. I don't know. He works for somebody else now, but at the time he was working for himself, just stressed himself the hell out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And he goes to those races and we never helped him out in the low stress with,
just added to it, just more and more and more.
Yeah. Can you build my engine before the race in the trailer, please, Jeff, my man?
Thanks, my man. Right. Him and his dad, Mo. Freaking love Mo. Oh my God. The stories with Jeff and Mo.
And you know what? Those guys were cool as hell, because when we raced the Mint 400 in 2013 or whatever, 2012, like they came to Vegas and like they walked with us through, tech and contingency. And I had, big MJ Motorsports stickers on the side. We were all wearing our shirts, and, I'll be forever grateful for, Mo and Jeff for, what they did for us in those days.
Great family. That's all I got to say. Great family, great friends. So we're talking about Rob Usnick and the Renaissance man that you are. This will come as a shock to many, but you're also a published author. You wrote a book. I've read it.
Yeah. So I always wanted to write a book, and I don't know. So I just sat down one day and did it. And actually I started when I was like 21 or 22, but I got through one page, and I didn't have enough life experience to talk about anything, without it being like science fiction. So anyways, I wrote this little book. It's called The Lapis Goat, and everybody who's read it, always told me like, Rob, that would be a great B movie. You should make a screenplay out of it. So I was like, all right. So I've started to write a screenplay, and if you study screenplays, like every page is like a minute of cinema. So I was like, yeah, I can't do this. And then I wrote the book in first person. It doesn't translate to a screenplay great unless you have somebody narrating it. Called this kid in North Carolina over in Wilmington, and he was going to write a screenplay for it. And what he told me was, he's like, I'm going to write the screenplay for it, and we're going to submit it to Netflix, because Netflix is producing all these movies. And this is like 2017, 2018. I ended up getting busy with other stuff and didn't go back to it, and kind of, out of sight, out of mind. But now with Netflix like going off the chart right now, I really wish that I would have submitted it to Netflix, to have them make me a great B movie. And then one more other thing about the book is, The Lapis Goat's fun. It's, it's about smuggling drugs from United States into Mexico. And it's this fictional storytelling based on some characters in my life. But what I'm finishing up now, and I just got off the phone with Lisa before, this morning, is my editor in New York City, as I wrote 1,000 Miles of Dust, which documents all of our racing, talks about King of the Hammers, talks about Mint 400. And it was leading up to us racing the Husky, the McQueen Kong.
McQueen Kong. And we didn't, when we were talking about this earlier, Nora, we didn't actually talk about McQueen Kong.
No. And, that bike, 1970 Husky 400, one of 700 imported in 1970. It was the one that everybody wanted. I think Steve McQueen owned two of them. That's what he's riding in that historic picture of him riding the wheelie with the shirt off. And then we were racing against the other team that had a Honda, and they called it Hanzilla. Well, Hanzilla, the Ruby McQueen Kong, kind of a little play on that. And, those guys are all injured vets, and some of them had some amputees and stuff. But that bike was leaps and bounds like ahead of ours. They had, upgraded forks, they had disc brakes, and, meanwhile, this thing had nothing. We ended up losing. We got second place to them. And then we went back to race it again in 2016. We took the other two bikes down and got second again. So the old McQueen Kong bike got second 2 times in Nora. But it was a great bike, and it was a super history. And that book documents, me and Kevin Downing, and we're building it, and I'm shipping it to him, and internet friends are delivering it from where I bought it. It came out of a dude on Pirate, of all things. I put a post on there about anybody got an older Bull Taco, Husky, whatever. And I bought it for $1,300, and Armando Veruga delivered it to my buddy Kevin in Phoenix, and Kevin built it while I was deployed. And then the first time I saw it was when we were in Phoenix, picking it up to go take it to Mexico. I mean, just the book, it's a hardback book. It has like 240 full color pictures, because you know how it is, Wyatt, when you're down there and all this craziness happens, nobody believes you. Well, guess what we have?
Not at all.
And well, in 2015, 2016, we all have iPhones. So we were all taking all these pictures. So we were telling these stories, and guess what? We had the pictures to back it up. So 1,000 Miles of Dust, it's a full color hardback book, and it documents all of our racing, and then the magic that we all know Baja to be.
When does it come out?
So she's finishing up editing it now. I got to caption some of the pictures, but it'll be out soon.
Awesome. Well, I don't want to, wrap racing, because I mean, you've always continually kind of done that and showed up here and showed up there. But I want to get into this this last chapter of this interview, what you just came off. This whole, we touched on at the very beginning about your 18-day voyage from Panama City to St. Thomas. But you actually, I'm going to jump back even a little bit further. Slightly before that, you would text our group and said, hey, you guys should look up on YouTube this show. It's a documentary called Chasing Bubbles. It's going to change your life.
Oh my God. My girlfriend and I, Linda, bought our boat, Why Not, back in, 2 years ago, 2018. So it's 46-foot post, sport fisher with, twin Detroits, tuna tower, blah, blah, blah. And we've had it in Panama City Beach for, the whole time. I did do a couple charters on it, only when the charter boat wasn't running, kind of as a backup boat. But it really sat all last year. And, these boats are just like race cars and airplanes. The worst thing they can do is sit. When I got the job in St. Thomas, it really boiled down to, what are we going to do with the boat? It can't just sit up there in the water. It can't sit up there on the, in the boatyard. We need to either sell it or we need to bring it to St. Thomas. Well, it's 1,800 miles the way we went from Panama City Beach to here. And so I was studying, Wyatt, you and Camo, there's Shane Chiddicks, like everybody's on these boats. Like there's a lot more people on boats.
Yeah. Doug Jackson.
Doug Jackson. Yeah. So I was researching on YouTube, just movies, and I came across Chasing Bubbles. It has over 1 million views. When I called you and talked to you about it that day, or text you, I think it had like 150,000. Now it's over 1 million just in the last 6 weeks. But,
really?
Yeah, I kid you not. And the thing that got me with him is he was going to do it. He was going to go around the world and nothing was going to stop him. And even in the movie, they say it, people will sit at the dock for month after month after month on their air quotes trip around the world. They can't go because this isn't fixed. They can't go because this isn't fixed. When I watched that movie, I told Linda, I was like, I'm taking Why Not there. I called the boatyard. They're going to put her back in the water on a Monday, and I have 14 days. On April 27th, I'm leaving. That's my date, unless something's catastrophically wrong, of course. But I just prepped it. I prepped it like we do a desert car, the engine, the generator, the steering, everything had to be prepped because it's just sitting. But long story short, no matter what, I was leaving just the way Alex Rust was doing. And so, we get the Clearwater, we got trouble with the steering, fix that. But then that's when we decided to name the dinghy Bubbles. And
well, it's funny. Yeah. You named it Bubbles, you sent it out. And then that's somewhere around that little window, we come to find out that this whole Team Indiana with Nate Williams, Nate Jesse, the Brannick crew, Brant, who else is in that crew? There's a bunch of, it's Brant's wife hitchhiked across Africa with Alex Rust, Chasing Bubbles guy.
Yeah, because we were in Clearwater and I'd already written Bubbles on the front, and Clark was coloring it in with Sharpies. And I was doing these little video updates. I was like, hey, we're going to pay our respects to the, Captain Alex Rust. And I remember that little thread on Facebook went haywire with all these people like, oh my God. And, it was great hearing those guys say like, you know what, man, it's good to see that, Alex, who we knew, still has a positive effect on people's life. And I tell everybody to watch that movie. Oh, you're thinking about doing something? Do it, because there's no time like now.
Yeah. And that's the small world of it. It's Brant Irwin. He is Nate Jesse, the 4,400 driver, Nate from Talent Tank. He's Nate's co-driver, Brant Irwin, Team Indiana. He's a Purdue guy. He was one of those port guys, which is Purdue off-road something or other. It's his wife, Anna, and she had met Alex Rust when he was at Purdue. I want to say Nate and a couple of those other guys, Jonathan Terhune being included. I think he was on their same floor, maybe in their dorm, something like that. But yeah, Nate's co-driver, it's his wife. His wife hitchhiked across the continent of Africa with this guy. Insane.
Yeah, from like Cape Town to the north, like they did it north or south to north, like the long way.
Just crazy. But then again, small world, right? I mean, this is the guy, that you can reach out, and it was six or 7 degrees of separation. We found it in literally 2 degrees of separation that we knew somebody that knew Alex Rust the Chasing Bubbles guy. So the gist of the story is, yeah, he decides he's going to sail around the world. He spent 3 years sailing around the world. He just didn't go out and do the lap. He did it. He stopped places. He enjoyed it. He partook. He did it. And so you are fully inspired, like you're going to do this with your boat, kind of, right?
I get down here, and my boss at Ocean Surfari, he sailed from, the Caribbean all the way through the Panama Canal down to Australia and spending 18 or 20 days at sea or whatever. And I told Mark when I got here, I was like, listen, I'm not taking anything away from sailors, but you have so many less systems to maintain, and there's a lot of systems on this boat, and they're 40 years old, man. And, God love these Detroits, they just kept on humming along. But it wasn't without problems, and it wasn't without, this coronavirus that jammed us up a little bit. But what I learned is, maritime law says you can't deny anybody passage. So when it come time to go through the Bahamas, we could go through the Bahamas. We just can't stop anywhere. Whereas everybody's saying like, no, you're like, it's like there's a fence up and you can't get in. So I sent some emails, got permission from the Prime Minister to go through, and we just went through. And DR, we get to, Dominican Republic. Remember, we're fishing along the way because we're fishermen, and we caught marlin and we're, slaying barracuda, tons of blackfin tuna. It was fun. It was an adventure. And we get to DR and we pull into Luperon. We just came off like a 160-mile passage. It was a brutal day. And, when you come through the old Bahama Channel, it's like, it's big water. The trade winds are blowing. It's, 4 or 5 foot. And it's 10-foot seas. It's blackout dark. And I call into Luperon, the harbor. I'm like, hey, we're coming in. And this guy's like, why not? Do not come in here. We're closed. You can't come in here. And then another guy says, don't listen to him. Why not? Come on in. You're good to go. So then they start bickering back and forth on the VHF. And then finally a woman gets on there and says, break. Why not? Come on in. I'll call the Armada, which is the Navy, and they'll clear you in the morning. I was like, hey, no problem. I was in 10-foot seas at night. I'm coming in. You're not going to stop me.
Come hell or high water, you're not going to deny a safe harbor.
Yeah, I weigh 250. Clark weighs 270. Yeah, y'all want to fist fight? We got guns on board. We're coming in.
Stay tuned. Your talent tank isn't full yet.
Since 2007, Custom Splice has been the go-to supplier for tactical on- and off-road vehicle recovery equipment. Custom Splice owner Todd Stauffer saw a market where demands for absolutely the safest solutions to vehicle recovery were not being met. Since then, Custom Splice has taken on numerous safety and recovery projects, solving deficiencies in recovery gear for individuals and companies worldwide. What started with synthetic ropes has led to Custom Splice's expansive inventory of not just ropes in countless colors and diameters, but an expansive product line of hooks, fairleads, specialty thimbles, chafe guards, to name a few. Plus the fabrication of Custom Splice's newest addition, recovery rings. Not to be forgotten, don't miss grabbing some Custom Splice soft shackles with your next order, which are also available in many sizes and colors. Even though Custom Splice is a small business in America's heartland of Kansas, you can find Custom Splice employees shipping their products globally on a daily basis. Let's support this small business that supports our community and the talent tank. Give Todd and his crew at Custom Splice a call at 785-856-1844 or go to the web at customsplice.com before you get stuck without a Custom Splice solution.
Now, back to the show.
So anyways, we get in there, and then, the Armada comes on and says, I'll be out there afternoon tomorrow. No problem. So we anchored up, and we get there, and the guy on the Armada comes out and visits us, and he says, you got passports? Yeah. You got guns? Yeah. Looked at all our guns, which is 2 shotguns and a pistol. A lot of guys don't travel with them. I do because, I spent 26 years in the Army. If I was out here with no gun and something happened, I'd be the laughing stock of my community. But anyway, they didn't care. So then he says, I need you guys to take a COVID-19 test and stay here for 3 days for the results. And I was like, no, man, we're not doing that. And he's like, well, I can make a phone call. And he kind of has his hand out asking for money. So Clark gives him $100. And he's like, yeah, I could probably get it down to 1 day. And then Clark hands him another $100. And he says, all right, guys, you're good to go. He hands us a Dominican Republic flag to hang up. He says, you're more than welcome here to stay as long as you want. What do you need? And I was like, yeah, we need 400 gallons of diesel, 50 gallons of water, 120 pounds of ice, 3 cases of beer. He's like, no problem. He's on his phone. The guy comes out there, delivers all this stuff. He tells us that we can take the dinghy off the boat and go visit the beach. Like, it was just like the most surreal thing ever. Like, they went from closed to like, yeah, enjoy. What else do you guys need? It was just crazy. Like every place was like that, you know.
Here's the one thing that I think's awesome. The one thing that I think is awesome, and this goes to show you there's absolutely 2 types of people in the world. And I think you just hit on it. You just boiled it down to an example where those 2 types of people are. You have the ones who are, I believe even you told me there was a woman in Panama City who told you, you can't do this trip. You won't do this trip. Everything's shut down. You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it. Just like pulling into the, safe harbor there at, in the Dominican Republic. You can't come in, don't come in. You're like, I'm coming in, we're doing this. So there's the 2 types, right? There's the, you can't do it and you can do it. But then when you get with inside that, you end up with people that push the limits or don't push they play absolutely by the strictest of the rules, by the strictest definition of the rules. There's no gray areas or bending, or if it's not explicitly written out, then you can't do it versus you can do it. And having this conversation with my wife as I'm showing her, she's reading your text about the bribing, and she goes, I would have to tell my corporate, I sign an ethics policy every year. I'd have to report that. And I'm like, why would you have to report that? She goes, because I bribed an official. And in there it says, like, have you bribed an official in the past year? And I'm like, that's the point of the bribery. It's an agreement. That guy's not going to tell anyone that you bribed him. And you're not going to tell anyone.
Oh, I don't like calling it bribing. I call it, we paid for the upgraded VIP service.
Absolutely. That's what I call it. But some don't.
So he did come back with another guy from the Armada, and they gave his boat, like, they shook it down, right? Like, he was crawling in the engine room and up in the front hatches. And then Ricardo's like, do you have anything for my friend? And I was like, yeah. Like, I got $100 for him. And then Clark turns around and says, hey, is there anywhere else he wants to check? Does he want to spend the next hour checking the boat? Because you're not going to give us you're not going to upgrade us. You're going to stop upgrading us because we're done. He's like, no, this is it.
Oh, and then you guys, you get gassed up, fueled up, beered up, iced up, and you guys roll out of there. And your next stop is, you get your asses kicked, right? I mean, totally kicked, headed towards Puerto Rico.
Yeah, and these guys coming through the Old Bahama Channel, which basically just runs from like South Florida, eastward all along Cuba, Haiti, DR, PR, whatever. Like that seas are always big and they're always in your face. And we, and I told Clark, I was like, dude, I'm worried about from Great Inagua, which is the last little island in the Bahamas, to St. Thomas is like at 600 miles, and I'm dreading it. And he didn't know what I was talking about until we got out there, and it was horrible. The boat was just,
well, you're pushing directly into the trade winds, right? I mean, down right along that, in that area, the winds roll east to west and strong.
Yeah. And Mark told me, my boss, he's like, when you come, you may end up having to run DR at night because something happens and you'll get like 6 or 8 hours of just like dead seas. Well, he's true, but it's real close to shore. Well, the problem is with DR, it's not lit up. Like when we get to Puerto Rico, there's lights on the shore all the way from East Coast to West Coast. Like you can run San Juan, everything's lit up. Well, DR is like a big black rock in the middle of the sea. So you can't get too close because you don't know what's there. But he was right. It does calm down at night. So then when we get to DR, because the west or the eastern side of DR faces right into that, that trade room with that constant sea, there's no place to get in there to anchor. So I told Clark, I was like, hey man, I'm just going to alter course and it's 80 miles to Puerto Rico. And he's like, all right, sounds good to me. But you're going 10 miles an hour, that's 8 hours when we'd already been running 8 hours. So he takes over this, the wheel, and I get a couple hours of sleep. And then the minute he goes downstairs, it starts raining. So I sit up there in the fly bridge for 6 hours with my North Face jacket on, just sucking as the water just comes right into my lap. So finally, it's about 3 o'clock in the morning. The moon's raising late. The clouds kind of part, and I see Puerto Rico, and finally we can anchor. So I try to get into an anchorage, and this blacked out boat comes speeding by, and I'm like, "Hey, Clark, man, I don't know who these people are." And then they hit us with a spotlight, and it's the Policia. they're saying, hey, what are y'all doing? It's like, well, we're anchoring. No, you can't anchor. I was like, hey, man, first of all, good evening, sir. Good morning. How are you? We're U.S. citizens. Puerto Rico's the United States. We're anchoring. He's like, well, if you want to anchor, Puerto Rico's closed. You can anchor where you're at. And I'm like, well, it's 600 feet of water, so that's not going to work. He says, well, the next anchorage is 30 miles to the south. And I was like, sir, we're not doing that either. Like, that's ridiculous. And then he's like, after about a 30-second break, he's like, all right, well, go up to next to shore where it's shallow, anchor, then be out of here in the morning. I was like, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Like, was that hard?
And then, so we're getting to the point where we actually have some crazy action. You guys traverse across the north shore of Puerto Rico, across the next day. And then you guys, again, have another late night, pull in, anchor up. And then you guys got some insanity, some crazy action. Right.
So we make it all the way across, we fished all the way across, Puerto Rico. I think it was, 100 and some miles or whatever. And there's one last little spot we're going to stop and pull in, and it's Baja de Cerveza or something like that. This little harbor anchorage, nobody's in there. We pull in at night, and the police stopped us out front. It's like, hey, what are y'all doing? I was like, hey, man, we're on our way to St. Thomas. We're just anchoring. We'll be out here first thing in the morning. He's like, all right, go ahead. Again, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Is that hard? So anyways, we pull in there, we drop the anchor, and we're only going to sleep. And the way the winds was, I told Clark, I was like, hey, we don't need to get up at the crack of dawn in the morning. It's going to be windy early. By 10 or 11 o'clock, it's going to start getting better. So 10 or 11 o'clock, we'll leave. So, we ate and had a couple beers and went to bed. And I have Navionics on my phone, and I keep it where it's tracking us, and I just set my alarm to make sure we're not dragging the anchor. So early in the morning, I noticed that it was dragging a little bit, but we're getting ready to kind of leave anyways. And Clark runs in and says, Rob, we're on the ground. And I'm like, what? So I run out the back, and I looked over the side of the cockpit, and there's reef all around us. And I jump in the water with my mask on, and I see both my props just like smashing these rocks. And so first thing you do, you always try to self-recover. So, my anchor is a big, huge, heavy anchor, and it's all chain. There's no rope. So I tried to use the anchor to pull us off of it. That didn't work. Hopped in the water, tried to carry the anchor to, like we would do a winch, right? To go a winch and a pull pile basically with the anchor to try to pull us. Every time I'd lift the anchor, the wind would blow. We had two things going bad: outgoing tide and the wind blowing from the southeast. And it kept pushing us right on it. So I get on the radio. I asked if anybody's in that harbor could help us. And then the Coast Guard San Juan gets on there and says, why not? Are you in distress? And I'm like, well, actually, no, not this second, but we're about ready to be in a lot of distress. So they call, a little cutter comes out. The policia get called out. They come back out. Customs Immigration comes back out. So all these boats are sitting there. Well, before they were coming out, I told Clark, I was like, hey, I think we can move the boat. So we both hop off the back, and we could both put our shoulder underneath the swim platform and just, we're both big dudes, lift the boat enough to unload it off the rocks, and we could move it. And believe it or not, it was working. The problem is when we lifted it up, then the wind would move it. And Wyatt, I'm standing there, and I could see where it drops off to 8 feet, and we just can't move that boat 5 feet over onto it. So
what a heartbreaker.
Yeah. So the police show up. They don't have any lines, of course. So I have 15 dock lines in this boat. I tie bowlines in the end, hook them all together. And by the grace of God, that little center console pulled us right off that reef, right in the deep water. And so now the Coast Guard's behind us, Customs Immigration's behind us. The police are still sitting there. I just jump in with my mask to check the bottom of the boat. The anchor's, set good. There's not a ding on the props. There's not a ding on the rudder. I didn't even see a piece where the bottom paint was chipped. Dodged the biggest bullet of my life ever. So I hop off back onto the boat, and I'm standing on the rear of the cockpit. I'm like, okay, I'm ready for question and answer. So everybody wanted to know what we were doing there and blah, blah, blah. So
they made you look stupid.
Yeah. I was like, of course. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm actually a pretty good boat driver. It's anchoring I suck at. So the Coast Guard, the Customs does their report. The police do their report. The Coast Guard said they had to do a SAR report, a search and rescue, since they came out there and air quotes rescued us, which they didn't do anything. So then they're like, we go offshore for that inspection, and they end up giving me a boat inspection, like a safety inspection. And then because we're a fishing boat, they gave me a commercial fishing inspection. So I ended up getting a warning ticket for not having trash and oil discharge placards posted. I was like, I got them right here. I just didn't put them on. He's like, well, they got to be mounted. Here's your warning. So finally at 11 o'clock in the morning, we're leaving for Puerto Rico for St. Thomas. And I told Clark, I was like, hey buddy, remember this morning early when I said we don't have to be in a hurry? This is not what I meant by we didn't have to be in a hurry. But the good news is, once we were going, I could look ahead and see St. Thomas, and it was just an easy 50-mile ride.
And y'all rolled in 18 days later, 5 in time for some beers.
Yeah, Clark, dude, that dude, man, for him to be able to take the time off, I told him, I was like, hey, we could probably run hard and do it 4 days. We'll take it easy, have fun. It'll take 8. He's like, I'm in. And it took us 18 days. So I called the guys, and I will say this, Wyatt, everybody down here who was following us on Facebook and knew that we were getting close, I started getting texts from my boss's wife, my coworkers, and they were all sending me these texts that says, hey, Rob, welcome home. Like, I've never felt like so welcomed back to any place I've ever been. And now I've only lived down here for like 3 or 4 months. So I called Spencer, my other boat captain, and he met it. We pulled into Megan's Bay. If you guys Google Megan's Bay, it's an amazing little anchorage on the north side of St. Thomas. He brought out lobster tails. He brought out prime rib. We cooked a big dinner, had rum. It was a great little homecoming.
Well, I think after you go through a journey like that to get to a place where all these people are, I think at that point you've exceeded the expectations that this is home, right? This is the new place. This is, hey, accept me. Look at the hell I went through to get here to be, in your midst. You hazed yourself.
It's still 1099. I'm assuming you're here for the long haul since your boat's here. I was like, yeah, Mark. He's like, all right, I'm gonna put you on W-2 now. And so I guess I'm a full-time employee at Ocean Surfari. I think they know that I'm serious about staying out here.
So yeah, now today you're back to fishing somewhat. You've been taking tours out. I know you had like a 5 o'clock, a dinner cruise, sunset cruise this evening before we were able to knock this interview out. Is everything kind of back to business as usual?
Well, on Tuesday of this week, which is the Tuesday after Memorial Day, all the bars and restaurants are open. Social distancing, all that stuff still in effect, but the bars and restaurants are open. Come 1 June, tourists are allowed back on the island. Now, we've still been fishing some. There's locals we take out. There's permanent residents that, are people who live here, part-time that are here we're taking out. But the fishing's been great. And, we have the 2 fishing boats that we charter, and then we have our big 49-foot, our snorkel and reef boat. Well, that's what we went out on tonight to do a little pie trip. They're trying to do some new trips where we actually start them on I think next Friday. This was kind of like a trial run where we go out there, order pizza. It's a sunset kind of fun cruise, but tonight was kind of like the walkthrough before we actually go live and take customers out. So, we're open for business back down here, and 1 June, Airbnbs, hotels are all open. The people are welcome to come back, with this whole COVID-19 thing. So, the summertime isn't historically our busy season here because, when it's hot in South Texas, you don't usually go to where it's hot, like the Virgin Islands versus the winter time. But I'm watching the bookings every day, and we're getting more and more for June and July. So I haven't ran a trip since March 24th.
Well, I'll tell you, I think there's a little bit of a misnomer there, Rob, because here again, South Texas or even South Florida, it gets to be high 90s, 90% humidity, afternoon showers, which don't get me wrong, the afternoon showers are amazing, but then 15 minutes after that, the sun's back out and you get the extra humidity at that point. It's pretty suboptimal, here in the subtropics of the southern, these southern states. But you go down to the islands, there's constant wind. It's 80, 83, and the humidity is 70, 60. It's less. I don't know what the percentage is, but it seems less humid in here. And maybe it's just the wind, but the islands in July are much more pleasant and bearable and fun to be in than Houston. Just saying.
All right. Yeah. Okay. You're true. I mean, the islands are a great place to be compared to just about anywhere.
About anywhere. Right. No.
I'm out here. It's like we don't get the winds don't blow quite as hard, and the sea state's a lot better, as summer kind of progresses versus the winter where, the trade winds are constantly blowing. Now they kind of ease up a little bit in the summertime, but taking the boats out is great. I mean, they're great because, the water's not as rough as it was, when I was down here in January. When I looked over at Chris, Captain Chris Rapchek, and I was like, is it always like this? And he kind of looks around and says, actually, today's not that bad. And I'm used to the Gulf of Mexico, which is like a farm pond. I was kind of blown away a little bit. I had to raise my, flag of what's crazy. I had to lower it down a little bit because I'm like, well, I guess this is fine. Because, most of the boats in Panama City would cancel if it was like this. But out here, we're running.
Very cool. Well, I mean, there it is. I'm not a big, offshore fisher, but I do like to come down and sail. So I know we'll see you down there. What is next for Mr. Rob Usnick? You continue to challenge yourself with some insane stuff, from racing King of the Hammers to just going out and, riding dirt bikes from northern Arizona all the way to southern Nevada, Nora, now sailing, all the way to St. Thomas from Panama City. What's next?
Honestly, Wyatt, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but Linda and I are looking at 42 to 46 foot catamarans. And I've got her, sold on sailing the Caribbean, but I'm telling you that around the world trip it has me so intrigued and so just like I'm blown away by it. I'm blown away by the logistics of it, by the preparation, the stamina, the adventure of it. Like, I think the next that'll be what's next for me. Not anytime soon, but I think that is what I want to do. That is what I'm going to do.
And if you did it like Alex Russ did it, where people fly in and join you for different legs, I'm down.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I don't think anybody could do it with you the whole time. Just like Alex, I think you'd have to be like, hey Wyatt, I'll pick you up in, wherever, and you can ride for 3 or 4 weeks through, Fiji.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'll pick you up in Fiji and drop you off in Bora Bora, right? Or Thailand or Phuket or something, right? I'm all right. Cool.
That story of him, and then being on the sea, that's really where my mind's been lately. And honestly, compared to like a monohull sailboat or like this, this sport fisher I'm on right now, those cats are nice. And I think you have some experience with, sailing cats.
My only experience. Well, I mean, I say my only experience. My testing out of my sailing was on a monohull, which I was a disaster. Like I believe and love the stability of the big cats, but nonetheless, I was trying to bait you into alluding to something and you kind of never took it. So I'm just going to come out and say it. Are you working on some TV work for maybe a very popular show that you're something of a fan of? Is there something going there? I mean, I could read into some videos that I saw of you in the Dominica.
Yeah. So when we were in Dominican Republic, we took the boat off to the shore and I did a little video and I was talking about, I'm looking for an idol and, where's Jeff Probst at? And, I'm a lifelong fan of Survivor and I have my audition video already made and I just need to sit down and I need to do it this week, actually, because I think their deadline's coming up. I need to sit down, edit it all out, and do the application and try to be on Survivor. I mean, I don't know. Outwit, outlast, outplay. I mean,
it's a mental game. There's a lot of mental there, and I think you're pretty strong on the mental side of. I don't know if you're good at playing games, but you're definitely strong at surviving.
Yeah, well, I mean, the surviving part's easy. I think the social part and kind of navigating that would be the challenge. But I don't know. It's exciting, and as a super fan of the show, and I don't know.
Hey, I'll be cheering up for you and watching you, rise to the occasion.
So, and actually, I applied before, and I did get a call back. Once you don't get anything more than that, then you have to reapply all over again. So, I got a better video. I'm putting together some better stuff. Maybe I can get on there that way.
I'm pulling for you. If there's some if it was a popularity vote, I think we could, with off-road racers, I think we could, crowdsource, vote you in. if that were possible, right? Well,
Yeah.
Well, hey man, Rob, thank you for coming on. Did we cover everything that you wanted to get off your chest? Everything that is who Rob Usnick is?
Yeah. We covered a lot, man. And honestly, I'm a huge fan of your show. It inspired me to start my own show. My show has inspired other people to do theirs, which kind of goes back to Alex Rust, like what you did, it has like, trickle down effect. When you come up with this, it was a great idea. I loved it. And it got people doing stuff. But no, thanks for being on. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm a super fan of the show, super fan of ULTRA4 Racing. I've been around since the beginning of it. I've raced I've been out there 7 times, 3 in the buggy, 3 in the side-by-side. I did King of the Motos, so kind of got out of it. It's big time now. And the guys who are doing it, hats off to them, and hats off to these builders. And I'll never forget why I'm leaving on this. And I think it's just as true now as it was in 2007, 2008, when Kevin Yoder said it. These cars have got to be built to operate at 100% duty cycle. And it's the truth. Like that's why you don't see F-toys or stuff out there. One, they're not fast, but you can't build them heavy duty enough to last. And these builders are just cranking out these cars that are just blowing my mind. These drivers are Jason Shearer and those guys. It amazes me to watch them drive. They are insane. Eric Miller, Campbell's. I mean, everybody's pushing the limits, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, the bar continues to get pushed to these echelons that we would have never fathomed just 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and especially definitely not 10 years ago.
Oh my God.
Yeah, man, I do value that. I talk about this with so many people because this totally does get into my head, and really what I love is what inspires you. Where do you draw your inspiration from? How do you set the next bar? I don't want to sit down and look at what look at what Facebook shows me I did 1 year ago. They give you that every day. You get a memory, right? What you did 1 year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. I absolutely push myself to try to, open that up and reflect on the last year that I'm not sitting in the exact same spot. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And that's a great policy to have with yourself.
And don't get me wrong. We all have days where things suck. I had a day this week that I came home, I felt like I got my teeth kicked in all day. It was just very suboptimal, but then you have to stay positive, keep your head up, keep your head up in the air and keep your nose on the grindstone is really how you've got to do it. And you've got to keep pushing that ball and moving that ball. And the key for me is drawing inspiration from other people. And I will tell you that absolutely this show, it is cool that it does inspire people, but it inspires me just having conversations with, you. And I know there's going to be people that are going to listen to this interview and they're going to listen and be like, Rob Usnick, well, he's not even in ULTRA4 anymore. He's not a racer anymore. I'm not sure why it's carrying this guy. I absolutely, and please don't take that as a knock, Rob. You led to so much in ULTRA4 and you've inspired so many in ULTRA4. And just because you're not racing it today doesn't mean your son won't race it tomorrow. And guess what? It's also my show. So I'm going to cover who I do, but you've been a great friend of mine for well over a decade. And like I said, you've stayed in my house when you've had to drive through Houston. And I really strongly thank you for your friendship all these years and the stuff that you've been able to do physically and mentally and pull off. Live vicariously through some of your antics and some of the stuff you pulled off. I guess I think at the end of the day, when you kind of celebrate life, it's like, man, this guy had no regrets. Look at all of the just bucket list of hard ass stuff that you've pulled off, and it's inspiring. If anything, if it just pushes one person to go out and spin a couple more wrenches for 1 hour, one night, on their junk, then I think that's something. But I don't know that much either.
I know what you're saying, man. And like, again, I appreciate it. And our friendship is, like you said, been over a decade. And I'm looking forward to you and the family coming out and visiting.
St. Thomas it is. And anyone else that wants to go, you don't have to, You don't have to twist my arm. This is like your story about, I was, when I was stationed in Wichita, no one came and visited me. Well, when you're in Fort Bragg, no one's going to come visit you. But now that you're in St. Thomas, you don't have to really push people too hard to be like, hey, come visit me in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Okay.
I know. Hey, your AT&T cell phone still works. You don't need a passport. Flights are cheap. It's nice.
They take U.S. dollars. See?
Yep.
I'm right there. Rob, thank you so much. Congratulations on your transition into retirement. Thank you so much for your 26 years of service to this country. I know we just came out of Memorial Day, and I know that's to celebrate those that gave the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. But you served 26 years for us, giving everything, making many sacrifices in that regard in your life for our freedoms. I greatly and will always respect you for that, and thank you for that. And thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for coming on the Talent Tank. Thank you for letting me bounce ideas off you on a regular basis. Thank you for the support.
Yeah, Wyatt, thank you. And you're quite welcome for all, everything. And it's my pleasure, and it's really an honor to be on the show. And I can't thank you enough.
Well, there we go. All right, folks, I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're out. I hope you guys really liked this episode. It was a really fun one to make, as usual. I really have to thank my three partners on this. Custom Splice, those guys, if you need anything for off-road recovery or even on-road recovery or any projects, please hit Todd and his crew up at customsplice.com. Give them a call. Machining, oh my gosh. Branding Machines, Stan and Brandon, those guys over there in Fort Wayne, Indiana, they do it all. If they can't make it, I don't know who can. If you need it made, they will do it. Hit those guys up. They're a big supporter of the Talent Tank, and I value their involvement. And then last but not least, Magnitude Performance. Jason Yode and company, they're in Nacogdoches, Texas, and everything that they've done for the Talent Tank and getting behind and supporting this venture and this project and everything. Give them a call for your suspension needs. These guys do magic with springs. And then the parent company, Mass Motorsports Engines, man, they have engines on lock, hand built, lots of horsepower. They're your guys. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next week.
Thank you for listening and taking a dive into the Talent Tank. Please like and subscribe on Instagram @The Talent Tank or our website, thetalenttank.com.